Good evening and welcome to the September 11th, 2023 Auburn City Council regular business meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Present.
Berlant.
Here.
Holmes. Riddell Harris. Here. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Present. Let the record show we do have a quorum for the purposes of tonight's meeting. Next item on the agenda is the Honor Guard. Oh, please stand up. Thank you. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mark.
Thank you. You all may be seated. Thank you very much to our Honor Guard. We appreciate that this evening. Of course, today is Patriots Day. It was 22 years ago when our country was attacked by a terrorist activity, the worst in our nation's history. I know we're moving some furniture around, but we're going to make it work. I just had a few words to say that on September 11th, 2001, I was in my first tenure on the Auburn City Council, and I was actually mayor at that time. And on that fateful day, etched in my mind forever, I remember watching TV, as I often did, getting ready for meetings that day, when I caught the first reports of what became our deadliest terrorist attack on American soil. And like many, I couldn't believe what was happening before my eyes. 2,977 people died that day, 2,750 in New York, 140 at the Pentagon, and 40 in a field in Pennsylvania where the hijacked plane fell from the sky before it could evoke more devastation. More than 400 first responders died that day, and over the past 2 decades, more have died from causes related to rescuing efforts at the 9/11 attacks. Of course, we will never forget became our mantra. And I think that it would be prudent tonight if we took a moment of silence to recognize all those who have gone as a result of 9/11. So. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, of course, is the adoption of the agenda. Unless there's any objection, I'll consider the agenda adopted as proposed. Hearing no objection, that shall be the order. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have items 1 through 13. Are there any items that council members would like to remove from the consent agenda at this time? None? Okay, I just wanted to, just for the purposes of public disclosure, I'd like to take item number 10, which is the relocation of funds for police vehicle. And before we take that item up, Chief, you can have it. I'd like to ask the public if there's any request to take any items off the consent agenda as proposed. Hearing none, I'll have a motion.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I will go ahead and make a motion that we approve the consent calendar without item number 10.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Brullant,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Riddell Harris. Aye. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show the motion has been adopted unanimously. I did want to say, and I meant to say this under Mayor's acknowledgements. I'd like to acknowledge our Vice Mayor, Riddell Harris. Thank you very much for serving at the helm in my absence while I was in Chamonix, France. I heard you did a great job, and thank you very much for stepping in. The time difference was just a little bit too significant for me to participate remotely. So the first meeting I've missed. So since I've been on the council. So thank you very much. All right. On the consent agenda, Chief, on item number 10, the reallocation of funds for police vehicles. I understand that the Tahoe was incredibly difficult to get. And I did get kind of an answer, but I just wanted to let the public know. I mean, we're looking to purchase a Tesla instead of a Chevy Tahoe. They're very different kinds of vehicles. And so can you just kind of talk about how you anticipate using the Tesla as in your fleet? Exactly. Is it going to be on the beat? Or just kind of talk about that and how it is still appropriate to incorporate the Tesla without its souped up kits and so forth that the Tahoe would undergo.
Yes. Well, good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, Ryan Canan, the Chief of Police. So excellent question. We are looking at reallocating the funds that we are approved for several vehicles, one of those being a Tahoe. Now, we would still prefer to move forward with the Tahoe. But given the circumstances and the difficulty of finding any of these vehicles, that we're in the need of new vehicles now. And we thought we could address a couple things by getting this Tesla. One, it gives us a vehicle that we can use. Now, where it's going to go is going to be initially used as a command vehicle, meaning that the lieutenants will use this car. One of their cars will be replacing an older detective car. And then probably in the future, that Tesla will move in that same way. The other reason is we need some type of documentation to start moving forward with building our infrastructure for charging stations through PG&E. So by getting this Tesla now and getting this invoice now, we can start that process with our public works team. And 3, we know that the city has a legislative mandate to have so many vehicles being emission free, and we could help do that. We do have the largest fleet, I believe, in the city with the police department. So having one of our cars that could offset that is another win for the city. And in addition, and it's not lost, that we could possibly use this Tesla as a patrol vehicle in the future. There's been several other police departments that already have started testing out the use of Teslas as a black and white patrol vehicle. So there's a lot of ways we can use it. No, it's not the Tahoe that we've gone with these last couple orders, but it's still a vehicle that we can use to offset our vehicle needs and even the future for the city. So that's why we're looking at that now.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification because I do know a couple folks had some questions about that. And they are available and around the same price too. But we won't expect to see you have too many people in the back seat of the Tesla. I mean,
I hear they're roomy.
So thank you very much, Chief. That was really just the only question that I had on this item. Council members, do you have any questions for this item? Yes.
I would just say really quick that we do have regulatory mandates that are coming up, and by us being able to convert over some of the smaller, lighter weight vehicles, it gives us a little bit more room and time to convert over the larger vehicles that don't exist yet. So I think it's a great plan for us to start looking at any of our lightweight vehicles to figure out if we can use those at all possible, because we're in a spot where we have a mandate that is really hard to reach, and we're going to have to figure out how to do that. So having all the all the different departments work together is going to be the only way we can do it. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. All right. Any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I'll bring it back. Is there a motion, council?
Sure, I'll go ahead and approve make a motion, that we by resolution approve the reallocation of funds previously approved for the purchase of a Chevrolet Tahoe instead to be used for the purchase of a Tesla Model 3.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Berland.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvia.
Aye. Let the record show the motion has been adopted unanimously. I also wanted to note that our city manager is not here present with us today, but he is online. Thank you very much, Sean. Good to see you. I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment? This is an opportunity for any member to address the council on an item that's not on tonight's agenda. We can't take action on said items, but we can refer them to staff for future consideration at a subsequent meeting. Public comment is opened. Hi, April.
Hi. April Maynard on behalf of the Auburn Arts Commission. I just wanted to mention a few things associated with the Arts Commission. One is if you have not seen in person, the new mosaic sign on the corner of High and College.
Great.
It's fabulous, huh?
Yeah.
And it's just a tiny sample of what the big mural will be, which will be magnificent. Placer Community Theater opened their performance at Bus Stop. They're using General Gomez for their performance. This is the group that we've been hoping to work with to improve the stage here. So I recommend that anybody go see it. It's really, it's not the movie Bus Stop. It's very deep and emotional and amusing, and it's really good. And then let's see the other thing. Oh, the symphony. Arts Commission is working with the symphony for the concert this Saturday. Hope you can come. If you haven't been to the Symphony in the Park, it's a beautiful, beautiful community event, and we're going to be there doing things with them.
Thank you very much. I will be there. So looking forward to that. Thank you very much. Is there any additional public comment?
Yes.
Just a moment, Councilman. You have, if you,
Hi, Mayor and Council, Jackie Weston, CEO of the Auburn Chamber. I would just like to invite you all, since there will be no meeting prior to release the Quacken, where we will be dropping thousands of rubber ducks, not real ducks, from the sky at Railhead Park on September 24th between 11 and 2. Thanks to Amy for securing a tall enough venue to drop said ducks that will fall into different prizes, one including a $2,500 cash prize. So if you'd like to purchase ducks, there's a few left. You don't get to take them home, but you do get a number. Go see the auburnchamber.net. Thank you.
and I encourage my colleagues to buy their ducks. I've got my ducks. My ducks are in a row. They're ready to fall. You got yours too. Good, good. All right. Any additional public comment at this time? All right, hearing no additional public comment, let's move into the business item on the agenda. The first one is the adoption of an urgency ordinance to prohibit syringe exchange programs in the city by amending Title 9 of the Auburn Municipal Code, adding Chapter 123, syringe exchange programs prohibited. Chief, this is your item.
Yes, ma'am. So
All
again, good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members. Again, for the record, Ryan Canan, the Chief of Police. So tonight I am here in front of you to talk about the urgency prohibition ordinance on the needle exchange. So in August of this year, we actually received an application from the California Department of Public Health that there was an application to bring in what they call a syringe service program. This group is out of Sacramento, and we were able to see this application from the group and be able to review their game plan. There were some concerns on the methodology, and there were some concerns on bringing this type of program to the city of Auburn. Now, the group's plan is to have an area of operation that includes essentially South Placer, nothing east of Auburn and nothing west of the Lincoln area within the, as well as the unincorporated area in South Placer. Now, some of the information was that they were using is the number of homeless that we have. We have approximately a little over 700 homeless unhoused here in Placer County. And about 37% of them, per their record, have some sort of drug dependency, which could be needles, obviously. And within essentially their information, they were going to say that they were going to help 400 people in this area of operation in a year, and also pass out 200,000 needles within the same area of operation over a year. That equates to about 548 needles or so per day, which seems extreme given the circumstances, certainly for the city of Auburn specifically. Now, there is lots of information that talks about these syringe exchange programs, and find that they do work in some of these areas, certainly where people can bring the needles to a place and actually exchange them. Now, again, some of the concern was the way in which the application set forth. There was 4 ways that the California Department of Public Health talks about syringe distribution. One is a strict 1-for-1 exchange, in which used syringes are required to be returned for an equal number of new syringes. A 1-for-1+ model, which provided a fixed number of additional syringes beyond the number returned. Limits on the total number of syringes that may be acquired during a single transaction. And then the 4th one is a needs-based distribution that provides an unlimited number of syringes based on how many people who use intravenous drugs request. So that being the model, the 4th model is just the needs and the base model that the group has no data, or did not present us with any data why they think they're going to help 400 people a year, and why they think they need to pass out 200,000 needles annually to a group that equates to approximately 250 or so unhoused in that area of operation, which includes the city of Auburn. I also, in my analysis, what we find is, why are we choosing or why is this group choosing the most, what I would say, the easiest methodology? Because they're going to count the number of syringes that they hand out, but they're actually not going to count the number of syringes that they collect. They're going to base that off of weight. So again, if we're going to hand out 200,000 needles in this area of operation, and we're not going to account for that many back, I don't see that as a good model, given the circumstances, because it goes on to talk about their focus has been unhoused here in this area, but the unhoused don't have a home for a home delivery option. They also don't have typically vehicles to get to a location to pick up the needles. So those 2 areas, again, for concern, is that the group never comes in and describes their model. How are they going to account and take away that concern that people will have about delivering needles to open spaces, parks, business areas? I mean, who knows where they could go. So there's no plan in this application that directs or addresses how they're going to handle home deliveries. Again, it goes back to their location is actually in Sacramento County. And so if they were to go to pick up at their location, the unhoused and the folks that are being helped will have to drive to Sacramento to get their syringes. Furthermore, to actually dispose of the needles, the California Department of Public Health talks about a pharmaceutical consolidation point. And they have a list on their website that lists all the various consolidation points. On their same website, in the same documentation, it talks about the department makes no guarantees as to completeness. Call locations first to confirm they are still participating in this program. While reviewing that list, the closest one actually is not in the city of Auburn, but is in unincorporated Auburn, which is at the dump. That's where the closest one is for this area.
You mean the transfer station?
Yes, the transfer station. Thank you. It's probably a better way of calling it. Thank you.
Yes, the closed landfill.
So again, there's a lot of concerns about this model and this program coming into the city of Auburn and the area in general. As noted, I think there was a thoughtful approach that could have been done on behalf of the group. There was never any community outreach. There was no outreach to law enforcement. Certainly, as you can see, other law enforcement agencies and entities are taking a similar position. And so I think there's a better way of handling this moving forward.
Thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate the staff report. Council members, I'm going to open this up for questions. Yes, Councilmember Lant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, thanks for the presentation. I have a question for you, and then maybe a question for our legal counsel. Just curious, thank you for, your perspective from an enforcement lens. I know many of us have heard also from the sheriff and others in our county's law enforcement world. I'm curious if there's been any discussions with the county's health director and more of a medical perspective of the value or concerns, shared concerns that you have on this project.
So I can speak for myself. There's not been any discussions with public health and human services on this specific matter. Obviously, our position comes from enforcement as well as reviewing of the application and the analysis.
Thank you for that. I mean, I think, and I'm tying this to comments, but I think that's a critical piece for us to also hear from. And I realize this is urgency, which means we have more time to truly study something and modify for a permanent, a permanent ordinance or an ongoing ordinance. We've heard and maybe we'll hear from members of the community some concern that that your points about the application itself and the specific or not specific elements of this application. But I'm curious if there's any concern from your perspective that this ordinance is too restrictive and too broad. And while while we need more information from this applicant, is there more is there lighter language that could be used to allow a program if, again, there's medical evidence backing that it's needed, that would still allow like a program, but not the one that you're talking as far as the specific application? Does that make sense? That wasn't very clear and concise, but
It does. Yes, sir. And it's an excellent question. I think that's where a lot of concerns are coming from. The issue is we got this application in August. The only way we can get ahead of this is by having an actual ordinance for the city of Auburn. Otherwise, the California Department of Public Health could actually force and allow some type of needle exchange within the city. All we're trying to do is get in front of that. And again, I'm not the expert in these things. There's people far smarter than I am on this topic that could help provide us what is a better approach for maybe it's the city of Auburn. And I think that the goal here is to apply this ordinance, this urgency ordinance now. Yes, we're prohibiting it for the time being, but if in the future, other cities, other entities, this region comes up with a better model, maybe that's the time that we look at that and readdress our ordinance.
great. Thank you, Chief. Gary, my question, the county I know is going to hear this in this week,
Yeah.
this coming week as well. And I'm just curious if with the other jurisdictions that you're working with, if others are doing this same matter of let's urgently say no, but then potentially, find an appropriate medically based option that softens the language a bit, or sticking with this type of all out ban.
Yes, there are other jurisdictions that have adopted urgency ordinance to do this. We have worked on it elsewhere.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's into my questions. I have a couple comments, but that's all my questions.
And I was also just going to mention, Councilman Berlant, is that certainly the adoption of this ordinance does not preclude us from amending it or rescinding it at any time. So it isn't something that's etched in stone, but I so just wanted to make that statement as well. I'm sure you're aware of that, but just for the public's purposes. Councilwoman Amara?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same questions, but I guess I would ask legal, how hard would it be to rescind it if we do find an appropriate program that is beneficial for our community?
Or
So-
amend it, either way.
Or amend it?
Yeah, it would take another ordinance. So there'd be a first and a second reading. And it would be effective 30 days after, unless there was another urgency ordinance, it would take effect immediately. But you could amend this code section, the chapter that's being added here, add to it, do away with it completely, any of that.
And it'd be 30 days unless it was an urgent ordinance.
That's right. So there's actually two ordinances on the agenda this evening, an urgency ordinance and a non-urgency ordinance. The difference is an urgency ordinance takes effect immediately and a non-urgency ordinance requires two separate meetings and it's effective 30 days after.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have any further.
Oh.
Actually, I do. I'm sorry.
Sure.
So is this program, is this company, you said is based out of Sacramento? Are they actually working in Sacramento County
It's
then?
my understanding they operate out of Sacramento County now.
And is that the only program out of Sacramento County to your knowledge?
I couldn't give you a real answer on that.
Okay. And what was their did they talk about their success in Sac County with this program?
Within the application, they talked about what they're doing within Sacramento County, and they talked about the programs of a syringe exchange type programs. And again, there is evidence out there that shows that these are valuable type programs, but I don't know enough about them to give you an honest answer or any type of analysis on my part.
Okay, great. And just to be clear, then this is not a one-to-one exchange.
This is not the one-to-one exchange. This is the needs based. So someone could ask for, again, as many needles as they wanted. And the issue is they're not counting them back either.
Yeah.
So it's not the one for one, which is
Thank you.
a concern. Yep.
I appreciate that.
Yes. Councilwoman.
Thank you. This is a question, I guess, for Gary. So the emergency ordinance, how long does that last?
An urgency ordinance is
Urgency.
in effect for as long as this council keeps it in effect. The
Okay.
reason why there
I
are
thought it was only like, I was talking to Sean, he said it was like 30 or 90 days that it was in fact.
Yeah, so two different types of urgency ordinances. An urgent zoning ordinance has time limitations on it.
Okay.
This one is not.
Okay, so what is then the difference between an urgency ordinance? Just that you don't have to do two readings? Is that the only difference?
That's right. Yes, an urgency ordinance will take effect this evening if it's adopted by the council. It also requires that you make specific findings about health and safety, which are included in your urgency ordinance in the agenda.
Is there a reason to do a second ordinance if the urgency ordinance has no end?
Yeah, the reason for the second one is that you don't have to rely on those specific findings about public health and safety. So in order for something to be in place long-term without having to justify it on those findings, you do both at the same time, or that is one way to do it. So that the urgency ordinance takes effect immediately, and then your regular ordinance that follows the normal procedure with notice and 2 meetings and an effective date follows behind it.
Would it be possible for us to just approve the urgency ordinance and wait till we had a better idea of what we really wanted out of an ordinance and approve that secondary ordinance later?
It is possible. That ordinance, the justification for that ordinance would have to be the health and safety findings only. So you wouldn't have the benefit of a non-urgency version of the ordinance.
But we have those health and safety, so we don't really need the non-urgency ordinance at this moment.
Well,
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand why you would need 2 ordinances at the same time.
no, that's right. I'll go into a little more detail. So if an ordinance were challenged, the city would have to justify it on the health and safety findings. We do believe you have those findings. That's why the urgency ordinance is before you tonight. All ordinances that follow the normal procedures don't require that second additional justification. So as a matter of defending the ordinances of the city, it's better to have a non-urgency version.
Okay, but it is possible for us to not approve that secondary ordinance tonight and wait a month and get some more information, because this was kind of done quickly and I'm just a little concerned about having an all or nothing kind of ordinance when we don't have enough information about it.
Yeah, so I don't think the non-urgency ordinance will change anything on that front. They're identical. They're identical ordinances, and both would be in effect until you make a change.
It's more like if I may, more like a procedural issue. I mean, even if we adopt we adopt both of them, it's just going to take either a motion to amend or to rescind at any time that we feel it's prudent to do so. My concern in not doing both, I think both is really our safest bet. I don't think that we are going to have the capacity to devote a lot of time to this issue in the next 30 days. Knowing what's on the agenda tonight, council members. So that's why I just say, I think that there's no difficulty in amending an ordinance or rescinding it if and when it ever becomes necessary. I would feel more comfortable taking both actions as recommended by legal counsel at this time. I don't think it changes anything to not adopt that second ordinance, because we still would have to rescind the urgency one anyway. So that's just my thoughts, but I know this is your asking questions, but I just wanted to help that along if I did, maybe. I
Okay,
didn't.
so it's more procedural. We would still have, if we wanted to give direction to staff to come back in 90 days with something that was more appropriate for Auburn specific versus a very black and white ordinance, it would be possible for us to give that direction if we wanted to.
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Holmes.
Yes, well, it was suggested earlier, but I'd like to know what other jurisdictions in Placer County are adopting or planning to adopt similar ordinances.
Well, I can't speak for all the other agencies. I do know that Placer County is planning on an urgency ordinance is going in front of the Board of Supervisors tomorrow.
And then also, Chief, Rockland is hearing the same ordinance tonight. Lincoln is going to be discussing it this week.
Yes.
I think Roseville is only doing a letter from their police chief. I would assume that Loomis would be doing something similar as well. I don't know about Colfax. But Rockland is considering it tonight. Lincoln will probably have it on their, I think it's the 25th or some next 2 weeks for the actual ordinance.
All right, thank you.
Is that all, Councilman?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Chief, you may not have the answer to this, but I'm just wondering who pays this organization for the needle exchange? How do they get their revenue?
I do not know.
We don't know. Okay. So, and again, they didn't come forward to discuss any aspects. They just simply put an application into the state, and then there was a mechanism by which we were alerted by the state. Is that correct?
Yes. So their application went to the California Department of Public Health, and per laws and guidelines, public health has to forward it out to the entities that will be affected by that, which includes
Okay.
law enforcement.
Really, pretty much just to give you a heads up, this is coming, just so that you know that it's coming.
Yes.
There's no, otherwise, if there was no ordinance, there would be no way to preclude this or have any kind of discussions really with them. But it's curious. I just wonder if they received their money from the state or who would be paying for that. I don't know anything about this particular company. That one for, the at a needs basis, that concerns me, clearly. So, but I had questions similar to Councilman Berlant, but that's been answered. Let's see here. So that really was the only other question that I had that hasn't been asked at this time. What I'd like to do at this time is I'd like to open it up for public comment, and then we may have some additional questions after. Chief, if you'd stick around, of course, in the front row, that'd be perfect. This is an opportunity for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Yes.
Answer your question about who pays for them. It's the California Department of Public Health.
So it is the state agency that,
Yes.
the agency that gives us the notice is the entity that's paying
Yes,
them
correct.
for their, thank
Yes,
you.
That's correct. Okay, so good evening, council members. My name is Caroline and I'm a resident of Auburn.
Excuse me. Can you do
Oh, yeah.
the microphone? Because they're trying to hear you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name's Caroline and I'm a resident of Auburn. I'm speaking to you here tonight with the unpopular opinion to allow harm reduction programs to operate in the city of Auburn. I'd like to share with you why this is important to me so you can understand why I'm both compelled and qualified to share my statement with you here tonight. I spent 13 years as a methamphetamine addict, with the last 4 of those years shooting up. I participated in treatment within Placer County, utilizing many of our county services and programs. I currently work at the largest provider of medication-assisted treatment services within our county, and with funding through the California Hub and Spoke Grant, I do outreach to break the stigma associated with drug use and to increase access into treatment programs, and yes, to provide harm reduction materials here within our community. Within the last 6 months, I've distributed over 1,200 Narcan kits directly to residents, parents, and community partners. You may have seen me at local festival or on our streets or in our homeless camps with my bag full of Narcan, fentanyl test strips, and information for people on how they can receive treatment for their drug addiction. While we would all like to believe that drug abuse does not occur within our town, simply put, it does. Being in my position directly in contact with people in treatment and who access these harm reduction materials, I can tell you that it happens on a much larger basis than most people are generally aware. A box of Narcan I distributed was used to reverse an overdose in a local bar right down this very same street last month. And I can also let you know the Narcan was recently used in our skate park to reverse an overdose of a 14-year-old child. A friend of his happened to have some in their backpack. I have, of course, read the statement by the Placer County Sheriff's Office in strict objection to these types of programs operating within our county. I'm not here to speak in support of this particular company operating this specific program. I am here to implore the city council to not respond out of fear and hastily pass an ordinance that shuts the door on this type of program operating here, period. While the idea of needle exchange is new here in Placer County, these programs have long been endorsed and encouraged by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Surgeon General of the United States, the World Health Organization, the American Public Health Association, and the American Medical Association. Syringe service programs, SSPs, are proven and effective community-based prevention programs that can provide a wide range of services, including access to and disposal of sterile syringes and injection equipment, vaccination, testing, and linkage to infectious disease care and substance use treatment. I would like to go back to my own experience as an addict. When I was using drugs, I didn't access medical care. I tried to stay as far out of the public eye, had a fear of establishments, and wanted nothing to do with agencies or services. I thought about getting treatment and I wanted to get better, but I had no idea where to start. It was not until I encountered a county system and learned the options that were available to me that I began the steps to change my behavior and get help for my own addiction. A well-rounded, well-regulated, safe syringe program offers resources and help for the people participating in it. Coming into regular contact with someone in a position to offer them help is often the first step of an addict, usually in getting help. In fact, research shows the new users of SSPs are 5 times more likely to enter drug treatment and about 3 times more likely to stop using drugs. Not only do needle exchange programs offer a gateway for faster facilitation into treatment, they also are a vital tool in reducing transmission of viral hepatitis, HIV, and other bloodborne infections. Studies also show that SSPs protect first responders and the public by providing safe needle disposal and reducing community presence of needles. I know there's been a lot of concern over the return policies for used syringes and the fear that they will end up littering our streets. I completely understand this concern because after all, I have kids too that play in our parks and walk our streets. A well-run program provides proper disposal options. While I've read a lot of comments about our town turning into San Francisco, the study that was actually done in regard to needles ending up on the streets compared the number of improperly disposed syringes in San Francisco and Miami and found that Miami had 8 times as many syringes left on the street. And the reason was that San Francisco had a safe syringe exchange program while Miami did not. A needle exchange program actually gets syringes off the street in areas where they operate by providing a safe place to return them to. The Placer County Sheriff's Office letter states that they're actively working to reduce the issues surrounding homelessness, reduce tragic deaths related to drug use, and discourage illicit drug abuse. Their approach is to completely shut down this type of program within their jurisdiction. What the Sheriff's Office fails to recognize is that SSPs actually work to support all of these same goals as well. We have a lot of problems within our community. I drive the streets and see the same things that you do around me. I know there's a problem with homelessness, with mental health, with drug abuse, and with public safety. I also know there is no one single solution to these larger system problems, and that it takes multiple agencies with multiple approaches, all working in conjunction and collaboratively to begin to address the issues that face us. By completely shutting down one of these approaches, it takes a tool away from trying to help make a positive impact on our community. Even if the city council opposes this specific program, please do not pass an ordinance that bans this type of program completely in the future. I truly believe that given time for discussion and mutual sharing of concerns and goals, that there can be an option found that works for all residents of Placer County.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? And just to remind folks, we do have a 3-minute, I let you go over, but we do have a 3-minute limit.
My name is Brandy Piquette and I live in Auburn, and I have worked in Placer County and in Sacramento County and the state in mental health services for 8 years. I have worked in harm reduction programs and I have seen how they work. Bringing a program like the needle exchange program into this area actually invites those that are homeless, those that are using into these harm reduction programs where they receive support. So these are people that don't have support currently. They may not have ever had support walking through their mental health services, walking through their addiction. And so it's when they come in contact with these services that they learn their own value and they learn how to recover. Support is one of the biggest pieces to recovery. And so if we just take the drugs away and we put them in a house and we say, hey, there's some counseling for you, that's not enough. It's making those connections, making those relationships with them. And a program like this is part of that process. It's the whole person. It's not just a piece of the person that we want to treat. It's treating all of the parts of the person as a whole. So logistically speaking, the state has reformed Medi-Cal and DeKalb-AIM, which is coming through any door. This is another door. This is going to allow the harm reduction programs that exist within Placer County to offer more than what they already offering, which would increase recovery time or decrease recovery time and increase the amount of consumers coming to those services. And so I would hate to see the public comments from the privileged deny those that struggle and have struggled all of their lives from a service that they need to make human contact so that they can have that recovery. It may not be this program, maybe the county needs to build an RFP in order to get the type of program that they feel will be supportive to this community specifically. But, we do need to respect the state's take on supporting the individuals that need it. The funds are there. And so.
Thank you. Whoops. Additional public comment?
Madam Mayor and council members, my name is Connie Brocker and I'm a
And
resident.
I'm just going to ask you to really speak into that mic because you're very
Sorry.
soft-spoken, which is lovely, but I want to make sure everyone can hear your words.
Madam Mayor and council members, my name is Connie Brocker and I live in Auburn. And my concern about this specific issue is where is the accountability for the needles passed out to the needles taken in? How easily are they received by the homeless or person using? How easy is it to pass it to other people, to teenagers, to anyone in the neighborhood that, may be in this campground or wherever? So the accountability is a factor. What is your name?
So, yeah, just make sure you address us.
Okay. The officer was saying that, the whole thing about taking in needles and then having them weighed instead of 1 for 1, it just doesn't make any sense at all. It's a huge concern. And from what I've heard about this program is the numbers of needles are being used are an increase in communities. They're not lessened. They don't help anybody get off the drugs. They end up, it's spreading, right? It just continues to grow. So these are some things that I've heard and am concerned about. And that's,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any additional public comment on this item? Madam Clerk, is there any public comment online?
There is not.
Okay, I'm going to bring this back to the council. And I just want to again say that what we have before us is a request to adopt an urgency ordinance. We have a company that really didn't come to us, that just sort of put in their application to the state. We were notified, just through the motions of being notified that this was happening. And we haven't had any time to really discuss or collaborate with the other partners. I mean, I'm concerned with, having a program in Auburn, well, if Placer County didn't or what have you. And in any event, the fact is for me, I think that we do need to act urgently. This is, and whatever action that we take tonight does not preclude us from changing that. If we find there's a program that meets all of our needs and perhaps our other local jurisdictions are doing something similar, because I think that it's important that we look at this regionally, not just the city of Auburn, because you don't want to just have one little program in Auburn, then everyone's coming to Auburn to participate and what have you. I think there's a lot of discussion that can be had on this topic. But for the purposes of this evening and for this action, I think it is prudent that we take urgency action tonight. And the door is always open. It's an easy, put it on the agenda, and we can, if we need to revise or rescind the ordinance, we certainly can do that. But I just don't think that it's prudent for us to allow this particular company just to come in and without giving us any participation in the process and establishing a program that doesn't work for us. And again, it goes back to this whole mantra for me. I'm going to get on my soapbox because I can, and that is local control. What frustrates me is the state of California so often feels that it knows best for all of our jurisdictions and our constituents, but they don't. We do. we are sitting here today, the elected officials, we know our constituents, we know our community. And I think that we are the ones that should make these kinds of decisions and not allow the state to just bully us and say, well, here's a program. And if you don't act quick enough, that's what you're going to get stuck with. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't fit your population perfectly. So again, we're not saying no, never, but I think we do need to take this action tonight to keep our community safe. Yes.
I just have one more question
Oh, sure.
for legal. And it's probably been answered. So if we don't pass an ordinance, are they allowed to come into our community then? We have to have an ordinance to prohibit it, or how does that work?
So if this ordinance is not passed this evening, the California Department of Public Health does have the authority to allow it. That's where the application came in and the notice that came down to the locals. There's a fairly sparse health and safety code section on this. The Department of Public Health has a lot of regulations on how they operate. They would need to comply with all of those.
Mhm.
The city's zoning code does not expressly allow this. So as a matter of land use,
Right.
there's still an argument, although there's still room to argue around that. Some health facilities are allowed and things like that, but it's not expressly allowed in the zoning code. So as a matter of land use, it's probably prohibited, but not as a matter of operation outside of your land use authority.
Okay. Okay. So the prudent thing, if we do not want this company to come in at this time, would be to adopt this urgent ordinance.
Right. And this would apply to all companies too. So yes.
Right. Yes. Unless we rescind it.
Right.
Or amend it. Yeah.
Or-
And we do that all the time. We amend ordinances and,
Yes.
you know.
Madam Mayor, is this the appropriate time for comments?
Yes, this is the appropriate. If you have any additional questions or comments, I'll open it up. So I said my. But I'll go to the councilwoman over here and then I'll make sure I give everyone ample opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe that this program is something that could be very beneficial to our community. But if it's done the correct way and with the right amount of input from the community and making sure that we're doing it so it does work for our citizens. I think that local control is important, but I think if we're going to take that local control, then we need to make sure that we're helping all of our citizens, not just the ones that we feel like helping. So we need to make sure that those citizens that need to be reached out to and served have the access to do so. So I will be in support of this because I don't believe that this is the right company and is not working with the local community to ensure that it's meeting all of our needs in an appropriate way. But I also would like to get support from council to direct staff to come back in 90 days with an ordinance that puts the guide rails on as to what we think an appropriate one should look like. So that way we don't have a council 2 or 3 years from now that says, oh, well, it's just not allowed by ordinance, so we don't want to have one. Because we tend to put things into an ordinance and then it ends up being kind of the rule. And then people don't think about going back and rescinding it. And they don't look at the conversation that was had where we weren't necessarily all totally in support of it. It was just really this one company that we didn't like. So I want to make sure we don't wait until somebody has to press the ordinance. I want to come back with an ordinance that really works because I feel like this one was put into place because we have a time limit on it and we have to get it done quickly, but it's not being done necessarily with the correct wording and something that we really support. It's being done to mitigate this one particular company. So I will support this, but I also would really like to come back and as a community decide what's right for us and come up with an ordinance that says what we do and don't want in this type of a program if someone chooses to come in, not just disallow it entirely. So that's what I have to say.
Councilwoman Amara?
So while I don't know a lot about syringe exchanges, I'll be honest, that's not my area of expertise. Just in listening to the public comment, researching what I have been able to research in the last day or so, and speaking and listening to our chief of police, obviously it's very clear that this is not the appropriate company for our community. But it does make a lot of sense. It's a good way to reach folks and help folks. And I agree with Councilwoman Riddell Harris that we do have to serve the needs of a population that is needy. And there is a safe regulatory way to do it that benefits these individuals. I'm in favor of that. But tonight, I think I will vote in favor of the urgency ordinance. And I would support at least revisiting it in 90 days and, or if longer, the time doesn't matter. I think it's within a reasonable period of time. We should look at it, and we should be open to having a service like this, because I can certainly see the benefit and the outreach that it would provide for a lot of individuals.
Yes, Councilman.
Thank you, Madam
Brandt.
Mayor. I agree, I think with with all three of you have said. I'm appreciative of your comments tonight. It's got to be hard to come up here and talk about your own personal experiences, but I think that that's a critical piece that is missing in this item. And that's no disrespect by any means to the staff that worked to develop the draft ordinance. And I think the right response for us to ensure that our city and all of our residents, those that are impacted and affected by drugs, and those that are impacted by the other indirect things that happen in and around drug use. But I think that the missing voice in this discussion really is our health officer for the county. And so, while the sheriff has been very specific of their concerns, and Chief, I appreciate your perspective very much from a law enforcement. And I very much acknowledge for the entire group here that you spent a lot of time with the county dealing with non-law enforcement related mental health and other substance abuse related items, because they do trickle to the police department. Though, as you always remind us and do a very good job representing our city in a number of regional groups, it's not law enforcement's responsibility. It really needs to be with health care professionals. And so I'm really interested to hear from our county health officer. I have, just for the council's knowledge, asked for their perspective in this conversation. And the county is going to hear the same thing. I have to assume that the county will pass their urgency ordinance. Obviously, there's a certain level of fear and immediacy that needs to go on with this one application. But I too want to hear a revised version of this. Let me rephrase that. I want to see a revised version of this ordinance brought back to us. I very much understand the semantics of the urgency versus the regular one. Either way, as the mayor has mentioned, at the very next meeting, we can change anything. And so nothing is a done deal. And I think that it's actually an important piece, especially as we as a society, related to homelessness, unhoused individuals, behavioral health, substance abuse, we are changing our perspective. We're not just locking everybody up. We're finding wraparound services that address the correct ways to deal with the root cause issues of these different topics. And so we really need to hear more of the voices that we heard tonight, but not just in our city, regionally, because I say this in a number of ordinances, and I think it's an important reason that I, again, still will support the emergency ordinance. We can't have a different ordinance than the boundary.
That's right.
Literally, a half a mile, to the north of us. We have to work with the county.
Yes.
And again, I know our county supervisor will give us an update tomorrow, as she did last week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
She mentioned it at Medlar's, but we really need a regional approach. So I echo my colleague here, actually both colleagues, about asking staff to go back, asking the chief in your various work groups, because there are things that are meetings that I know you attend that are not just the police chiefs and the sheriff, but also with our health officer and our behavioral health professionals at the county who really manage and are the professionals. Again, you guys are great, but we are not a health as a small city. We do not have a health department. That is the county's responsibility. And so I too will ask that whatever motion we make, that we give the direction for staff to work with them. I will agree with my colleague to the right here that while I think 90 days adds the urgency to it, let's get it right. And so I want to make sure that we get it right, and then we work with our regional partners to find the appropriate solution. So I too will vote for the urgency and the ordinance, but very supportive of making sure that we alter the ordinance with the advice from the health professionals and with further review from our staff.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Holmes, did you have any comments?
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, well, before you make a motion, well, that's fine, actually. Go ahead. I can speak to the motion. So please.
All right. Okay, well, I move by motion adopt an urgency ordinance adding chapter 123 to title 11 of the Auburn Municipal Code, prohibiting syringe exchange programs from operating in the city of Auburn, and finding and determining that the urgency ordinance is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines sections 15061B3 and 15378.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's take a vote.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Burlant.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Riddell Harris. Aye. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. And we need a second motion.
Yes,
Councilman?
by motion waive the full reading and introduction of an ordinance adding chapter 123 to title 11 of the Auburn Municipal Code prohibiting syringe exchange programs from operating in the city of Auburn, and finding and determining that the ordinance is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to the CEQA guidelines sections 15061B3 and 15378.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor, before we take the vote, I just want to make sure that we don't move on to the next item before we give direction, because I
Yeah,
think
I'm
there's-
going to talk about that
Perfect.
right
Okay,
after.
thank you.
So, yep. All right, Madam Clerk, please call a roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Burlant.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Riddell Harris. Aye. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye, let the record show the motion has been adopted unanimously. And to Councilman Berlant's point, I have heard that there is a majority on the council that is interested in having staff examine this issue and to bring something back. I would just like to say that I would encourage us to take the time necessary to ensure we have discussion and collaboration with our regional partners. I think that's incredibly important because again, what we do here really should be the same as what North Auburn is doing. Otherwise, we're just going to attract individuals and so forth. So I think that I would prefer not to have a time limit because there are so many different issues in the city that are a priority for us. And so I think, and this is going to require a lot of time and research. And there's a lot, as Councilman Berlant mentioned, we don't have a health officer. This is not our specialty. So I would just like to say that there is a majority of council members. I've heard from 3 council members. So we'll provide direction to staff to revisit this issue after you've done your due diligence. All right. With that said, we're going to move on to the next item, which is item number 15, the proposed vegetation management plan.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm John Rogers, your acting fire chief. This evening, the fire department is asking you to receive and file a presentation on the proposed city parcel vegetation management plan. Before I turn the presentation over to Community Risk Reduction Manager Lindsay Davidson, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank her for her efforts in identifying, prioritizing, and working to reduce both the fire hazard and safety concealment risks on 29 city-owned parcels totaling approximately 25 acres.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Lindsay Davidson, Community Risk Reduction Manager for the City of Auburn Fire Department. As Chief Rogers just stated, this is just going to be a brief overview of how we prioritize the 29 city parcels and right-of-ways within the city. So a little bit of background on this. One second. Going the other direction. Down. As a little bit of background, City Council directed city staff to evaluate all city-owned parcels within the city and prioritize them for the $40,000 budget allocated towards this. So we took this and we didn't look at all city-owned parcels, but we looked at the vacant city-owned parcels within the city that require the fuels reduction and that we've received complaints about in the past. So the prioritization was based on a couple of factors. We have the fire risk hazard, and we also have the safety concealment risk. So the safety concealment will go hand in hand with our law enforcement partners and their impact program that targets the transient activity within the city. This program is extremely important because we're going to be setting the standard for the city parcels within the city. And we are going to be showing people what they should look like, how to create a plan, and how to really follow that and prioritize it year by year. On average, we have about 60 weed abatement cases every year on privately owned residential lots. And last year, we averaged about 82 acres that got maintained by our own residents. This project is just looking at 25 acres of our city-owned parcels. We took these parcels and ranked them on a scale of 1 to 3, as 1 being the lowest priority and 3 being the highest priority. Couple of examples. Well, one example of a rank 1, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So rank 1 would be behind the Maple Street sign. We see a few pine trees. There's low safety concealment risk, low ladder fuels, and it's not really topography driven in this area. So if a fire were to start, we don't have that uphill slope right by it. So this is a rank 1 because it requires very minimal work. It might just require some weed whacking every couple of years. An example of a rank 2 would be between Garfield Street and Elm Avenue. This little stretch of land has some ladder fuels, but it's not next to structures, and there's kind of low safety concealment risk, but just some covers down low. Won't require too much funding to get this taken care of though. An example of a rank 3 would be an area that we're all kind of familiar with back behind the statues and behind those auto body shops on Auburn Ravine. This has high safety and concealment risks and a history of unauthorized camping in this area. There's also a high fire severity risk in this area with immediate threat to structures. So again, those were just some examples of what we were ranking them based off of. And so then we're going to look at a couple of priority properties. So 6 properties were identified as having a rank 3. And I think we were able to take care of about 5 of those properties in the first year of funding. So the goal of these properties in the first year would be to reduce the safety concealment risk, reduce the fire hazard, and ultimately reduce the maintenance costs on these properties. So the initial cost on average per acre when you're doing high fuel reduction and heavy loads is about $5,000. But as you get those heavy loads down, it's about $1,000 to maintain per year. Of course, that's probably going to be going up in the coming years and has significantly gone up in the last couple of years. So these next properties we're going to talk about are all the ones that will be accomplished in the first year of the $40,000. So an example is McLeod Court that was ranked 3 just based off of the safety concealment in this area. It's also next to the Union Pacific Railroad tracks where we have unauthorized camping and a lot of reports of transient activity in this area from the neighbors. We also see a lot of vacant lots adjacent to these properties where we've worked with the residents in the past to maintain it, and they've put in tons of their own money to get those taken care of and are maintaining them on a yearly basis as well. Next, we see just off of Ophir Road. A lot of people aren't even aware that this is a city property, but we have high levels of transient activity in this area. So you can see there's a footpath even leading down there. So you can't see down there, but the transients head down. We have unauthorized camping, and it's very topography driven in this area, directly adjacent to the neighborhoods right there. So if we have any vehicle fires off of Ophir Road, there's high threat to the structures right above them. Another example that is very apparent is just off of I-80, right by the old mining statue up there. We have ignition sources of I-80, and we also have the Union Pacific Railroad again right next to it. We've seen transient activity in this area, but we have a lot of down and dead trees and topography driven fires in this area. Next, we have, as we talked about earlier, just off of Auburn Ravine Road, pretty self-explanatory in this area. It's going to take a lot of work, but once we get it done, it'll just require yearly maintenance. And again, direct threat to structures in this area. So again, just to recap about the city parcels instead of right-of-ways. The year 1 priorities are all rank 3s based on our evaluation, and that amount of work will total to about $22,195. That is obviously subject to change. That was on the higher end, so we kind of took that $5,000 and worked our way down. So right-of-ways were prioritized based on a couple of different factors, including if they're a primary evacuation route for our residents, their location to the American River Canyon, and the severity of work that needs done. These, of course, are going to need to be evaluated on a yearly basis. The prioritization that we did is just based on their current conditions. just a couple of examples that we were looking at. I think I have about 2 in here. So we have Landis Circle directly adjacent to the UP Railroad with topography driven fires up from that ignition source. We also have I-80 right next to it. And this route is heavily vegetative and would be the direct evac route for these neighborhoods in this area. Another primary example is Virginia Street, of course, directly adjacent to the American River Canyon, and has a lot of vacant lots next to it that are extremely overgrown and leading into the roadways. So there's heavy fuels that need work on these roadways. The total for the right of ways in the year 1 funding would be $17,600. So just in conclusion, this is an extremely important project because, again, people look at us in the city. When we ask them to do their work, we need to be doing our work on our own city parcels as well. So this is gonna really show them that we can be setting the standard for what it's supposed to look like. And after we get the majority of the work done on these parcels, like we said, it's about 25 acres. Once we can get the heavy fuel loads done, about $1,000 per acre, totals $25,000 per year just to maintain the city parcels, which is significantly less than what it's currently costing us or would currently cost us in the state that they're in. And this plan does account for the funding in coming years. And this, of course, can be reevaluated and reprioritized based on the following year's conditions.
Thank you. Yes, I'll open this up to questions. Yes, Councilwoman.
Thank you. So then all of these rank 1, 2, and 3 are all city parcels.
Correct.
That's correct. Okay. And none of it is railroad land or?
No, so the ones that are prioritized, none of it is UP road. There are a few that are adjacent to the UP railroads, but none of it is going into their territory.
Okay. And what are you using to clear? Is it mechanical only?
So we haven't gotten that far where we would contract out for these. So initially, yes, the mechanical thinning is the more expensive, which is why these are going to be more expensive in the first year of doing them. So for example, that McLeod Court does need some mastication, for example, over by the railroad area where it's super dense. But once we get that work done, we're hoping that then in the coming years, it just requires weed whacking and just the simple work, which significantly reduces the cost of it.
Okay. So then you'll put it out and you'll get some bids and come back but you anticipate it'll be about 40 for the whole project?
Yeah. So in that packet, it kind of lays it out and it goes the first year, second year, third year. Yep.
Yes.
So that first year, I think I got it to about 39,000 for the right of ways and the city parcels. But again, that's on the high end. I did the 5,000 for most all acre lots. Hopefully that will come down and we'll have room to do some maintenance on some of the rank 1 and 2s.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilman Berlant? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Lindsay and Chief for your presentations. Back in 2019, we commissioned a similar study. So I'm curious, what's the difference in today's plan that you're presenting to us versus the 2019 version?
So the main difference in the 2019 plan versus today's plan is that we actually have the ability to move forward with it. It took a lot of time and did a lot of effort in prioritizing those properties before, but we didn't have the means to actually get that work done. So we saw the right of ways, we saw the cost to do the parcels, but now that we actually have the means to move forward, really looking at those and breaking it down and seeing how we can accomplish the most we possibly can with the funding available.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that because, I do think, and, I think if I'm not mistaken, part of the, part of this kind of fuels reduction plan that we did in 2019 was a component of the funding that we had asked for and incorporated into Measure S, which of course, did not pass. And so I think we somewhat, failed to bring this back. And so I appreciate, Madam Mayor, you flagging this for a continued discussion because it is important. And since we did this in 2019, we've had fires on some of these properties and along some of our roadways. So I think it is critical that we do this. I did have one question though, just to dive a little deep into one of them. Thank you for clarifying that right away was a component of the 2019 plan. And it was this way in 2019 as well, but and I didn't catch this 4 years ago, but I'm curious, Auburn Folsom, it's index 41 and 40 in the report, but it's only it's only two stretches. Sunrise Ridge, which is the Vintage Oak subdivision, then it takes a little break. You know, and then almost picks back up at Deerbrook and then goes back down about halfway to what I believe is Tyler Drive. And then everything south of there isn't in the report, but it is all the same. And actually, I would argue it's all a grade, right? And
Yeah.
that's the reason why it's the place where we have had repetitive, not this year. Knock on and obviously, you know, I'm very sensitive to my neighbors along Auburn Folsom that have experienced multiple fires. But I'm just curious if you know, and if not, maybe we can go back and look at Auburn Folsom, because I would think
Yep.
that would be the entire stretch from at least Indian Hill down to the city line would be a roadway area that we would want, a right of way, excuse me, that
Yep.
we would want to look at.
Yeah, I agree. And that is, so the areas of Auburn Folsom that were prioritized initially in this were due to citizen complaints. So we've received complaints about certain areas, businesses with overgrown trees. So I will take your complaint and I'll prioritize.
Actually, the former
that
fire chief and
parcel of
city
road.
manager have a formal complaint from me because obviously, as the group knows, I've had multiple fires
Yeah.
that, you
Yeah.
know, this plan prior to that would have resolved. But while I personally and my immediate neighbors are appreciative, I just think that it might be good to expand out.
Yes.
One other area that I didn't see in there, and I know I have some colleagues who live along this area as well, but I didn't see Maidu Drive. And to me, that would be a similar-ish, not as traveled as Auburn Folsom, but based on the recreation that occurs and the amount of homes, and again, the grade.
Yeah.
That might be an area to look at. So no need to respond if you don't want to, but I would just.
So I
suggest-
believe back in 2019, that one was simply left out because of significant work by the fire department was done along all of
Right.
Maidu.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I had forgotten that, right, a good amount of work was done there. So that would be my two suggestions would be those two right of ways, again, index 40/41, and then looking at Maidu Drive, it just as we have one example. You know, the one, you want me to hold comment?
Yeah, let's hold
Yeah,
comments. I
okay.
just have questions.
Again, thank you very much for the presentation.
Councilman Holmes? Do you have any questions?
No.
All right, Councilwoman Radell Harris.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your presentation and for all your work. I think this is a great example of council giving a goal and then allowing staff to come back with a great plan and having it be, I think it's going to be really successful and helpful for the community. I know everyone loves the goats. Is there a possibility that some of this work could be done with goats, or at least the maintenance after the initial mechanical work, that could be an opportunity, or does it all need to be weed whackers and those kinds of things?
I think we can definitely leave that up to contractors to make that determination. I personally don't know how much goats can take care of in terms of like getting rid of the ladder fuels.
Okay.
But in coming years, I believe once we get rid of that major fuel reduction and the heavy loads, that's definitely an option.
Great. Thank you very much.
I'll say that I do have people asking me all the time about when are the goats coming back on the shaded fuel break? So I do have questions all the time on that. So I do really appreciate your bringing this back, and you know, it was something that we need to do. We need to really set an example here. I think it's a great plan. The question I just have is that, you know, I know that some of the areas you've cited are adjacent to the railroad properties, and that we're trying to work with them to get them to work on, you know, reducing their own fuel loads.
Yeah.
Is there any opportunity to kind of partner when we, you know, like, because are they going to be using private contractors, and maybe we can partner with them like we do with the county on road issues and so forth, but just wondering if we've thought about that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea. And I think us doing the work adjacent to it will definitely drive them to be more apt to getting that work done. I know with this upcoming fuel break that we're doing, they've agreed to continue along their railroad property as well to help provide that in-kind matching. So they are definitely open to the conversation, and it's something I will reach out to them.
I just really want to encourage that. And if there's any way that we could, you know, double our dollar by using the same contractor or what have you, that would be great, you know, so it gets that railroad property done at their expense, but it might also result in our work being done cheaper and at the, you know, at the same time. So I would very much encourage us to have those discussions and let me know if you need any help. I know our city manager is plugged into this as well. So very good. So we're gonna, if there's no additional questions, I'm going to open up for comment, or excuse me, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, any public comment?
There is not.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this back to the council for comments at this time. So Councilman Berlant, you said you had a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Really quickly, Lindsay, again, I appreciate the plan that you guys put forward in full support. The missing element here is maintenance, is keeping it going. And I think to Councilwoman Riddell Harrison, probably all of us, we would love to see the goats. And obviously that's a maintenance piece in specific areas, because there are some restrictions obviously along the roadway and in the stream beds, those would or even the railway would not be that location. But I just want to, prior to your time, we spent $60,000 in 2017 clearing one of these properties that the city owns, and that's the Auburn Ravine Trail area. And we've done no maintenance of it. And if you go by it, it, unfortunately does what vegetation does, which is grow back. And so my guess is this year will be more costly than it would have been back in 2018, 2019, if we had just routinely gone through there. Every year, though they are very responsive to me, every year I complain to Auburn Recreation District, who under our MOU does the weed whacking, but that doesn't address the brush, the blackberry bushes, and some of the other smaller invasive trees. So I think we just need to make sure that that this is an ongoing budget item into our budget, because I guess that might be a point of clarification. Is this a one-time ask, or are we building this into the budget moving forward each year? And if you don't know the answer, then maybe that's a question also.
We actually budgeted $40,000.
But one time? And I guess my question then is it our intent or even city management intent to make sure that it's ongoing? Because, and part of sorry, Sean, I know you're going to answer. Back to your point about leveraging costs, if we have a multi-year contract,
Yes, yeah.
this stuff becomes even cheaper.
It's my intent that we do this on an annual basis. I mean, that's just I was going to say that is that we do need to get ahead of this. We can't allow, go in and do the work and then let it grow back so that in 5 years we're having to spend as much money. But I think it's.
I agree. That's my intent as
Yeah,
well.
so
So
I think
our
we're-
intent, and hopefully the rest of you will
We're on
agree
the-
as well,
we're on
and
the same
I
page.
think
our city manager.
Attempt too.
So, yeah, and Lindsay's intent as
Um,
well. so.
A couple quick things. One, I've brought this up to our predecessing public works manager, and I know I've had some more recent conversations with Menjel Dean, our public works manager. So I don't want to put him on the spot, but I'm very much an advocate that we purchase a tractor implement a tool that will allow potentially our own public works to use tools that are available that other jurisdictions use to just drive right along the right of way and clear the grass. It doesn't work everywhere, but I think there are some opportunities for us to use public works staff, which you already do. My guess also, my colleague reminded me, Maidu Drive may also not be on there because Public Works goes through there and uses other processes to kill the weeds. And so maybe that can be part of our green transition away from using pesticides to using a tractor implement. And again, maybe it's a contractor that does it, but just very much an advocate that is a tool that other jurisdictions use. I'll just be honest with you. I got pushback for that idea in the past from our previous public works manager, but I know this one, is all on board on it.
No
But
pressure.
I'll just end with this. We've got to lead by example. And so with our partners at the railroad that own significant amount of land in high-risk areas with a high-risk activity for residents, including myself, we need to make sure as a city that we are leading by example of clearing our own properties before we go and have conversations for property owners and the five of us.
Yeah.
Mandatory, requiring us to do our parts
Yep.
as residents as well. So again, in full support, I agree with the mayor on adding this to the budget, Sean, permanently. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, but I'm going to go over here.
Oh,
Yeah.
I completely agree with what everyone else has said, and that's it.
Okay. Yes.
Wanted to add that about 5 years ago, when I brought up goats, I was called the council goat woman because it was pretty new. But
You were the goat of council women.
I was the goat. No, Councilman Mackey was like, "What? You want what?" But anyway, so a lot of jurisdictions are using goats, and they're using them on the roadways too. So I think there are some companies that will do that. So I do like your idea of at least using them for maintenance, and I do support the tractor. I think that's a phenomenal idea. I think Public Works will get a lot of use out of it because they do have a lot of areas that they could use, and rather than use Roundup, I think that's a great idea. And thank you for the report, and your approach is wonderful. I see you're on top of it, and Chief John, good job. I appreciate your work here today.
Thank you. Councilman Holmes?
Yes, well, I'm very impressed with the proposal that you've made, and that remind us all to keep an eye peeled for various vegetation that needs further management. So while this is not an action item, I look forward to working with you on this as well.
Thank you. I was wondering, I wonder if ARD has some kind of a tractor device, and it might be prudent, or even, I don't know if the county does, but it'd be great to know if they do, and or maybe we could rent it, or if they want to purchase one, go and have, I mean, there are things that we can do. I don't know how expensive it is, but it'd be great to know what our neighbors have and whether or not ARD has something like that. And if they don't, perhaps they would like
The
to go
county
in.
might, but
the county
ARD does big grass. I don't.
Yeah, I just say let's explore our options and see what our neighbors have. And and again, I love goats, but I also want to be cost effective. So that's very important. We need to get the biggest bang we can for our buck. So again, I appreciate this coming back, and I appreciate the support that we can have this as an ongoing item to ensure that we can fund this and keep our city safe. So especially when we go into talking about the annual inspections and the mandate of to clean up your properties and so forth, the city really needs to do its due diligence. And we need to protect our residents, really, because some of our properties they're dangerous right now. Yes, as Councilman Berlant knows, on 2 occasions. So it is prudent that we take this action, and really do appreciate it and look forward to watching this grow. Good. All right. Again, as we mentioned, there's no formal action that is required for this particular item on the agenda. And I found it. So thank you very much. Appreciate that. Next item on the agenda is the American Rescue Plan Act funded projects for Old Town and Downtown. And after this item, council, I will entertain just a brief recess. Just 5 minutes after this item.
Good evening, Mayor.
Yes.
We lost one. Good evening, council members. It's just an informational item. Anyways, I'm sorry to add another informational item to an already long list of agenda topics, but Jonathan Wright here, Community and Economic Development Director. Since our new city manager has been here, there's been effort that's been put forth with the American Rescue Act funds for the Old Town and Downtown. If you'll recall, last year, there's a lot of discussion leading up to the end of the year, and then things just kind of stagnated. We talked a little bit in June at the budget meetings about those fundings being allocated still to the Old Town and Downtown area. And so I'm just briefing you briefly on where we're at. So for downtown, we've been working with April Maynard as the business district representative and liaison, who references her notes of the November 28th meeting as to the items that were really important to the district and to herself being a district member. And at that meeting, just to jog everybody's memory, council directed staff to bring back documentation necessary to have a strategic plan done for the purpose of bringing people into the downtown. So after staff reviewed the meeting and supporting documents provided by the district that stated their goals as being for travelers on Highway 80 and 49 to know when they are passing through Auburn, to know how and when to get off the freeway in Auburn, to be aware that there's a downtown district and how to get there, to find downtown an attractive, vibrant, and cohesive, clean place to visit, to find parking so that cars can get, or so that people can get out of their cars and patronize businesses. So on August 14th, staff released a request for proposals. We were working on that up until that point. So this is the Downtown Circulation Wayfinding Master Plan, RFP. It went out and has, we pinged just about anybody we could find on the Google search and any other mechanism to try to get interest in it. And lo and behold, we had, it closed last Friday and we had 4 responses. So
Great.
have not had a chance to look at that. What staff will do from this point forward is we will do we'll get together the references and then work with the district to go ahead and figure out how they want to move forward with that. It is my goal that hopefully we'll have a contract agreement, a draft contract agreement before this council, hopefully either the first or second meeting in October to move that forward. As for Old Town, we started working with Brad Baldwin, who's the new the Old Town Business Association chair, and the vice chair, who's Cleo Sanchez. If you'll recall, this was a November 14th meeting in which this topic was originally broached with the council. A motion was made to authorize that an engineering review of the Old Town infrastructure for the purpose of developing Washington Plaza and Fireman's Park was given. That information has been gathered. Now the information is has been put forward to the district, and we said, what projects they have less than $500,000. What project do you want to see done? Because with that amount of money, you're not gonna be able to do both Washington and Fireman's Park. They came back with, we really want to do Fireman's Park. They've had a lot of discussion with local businesses, with their district. And because of its location being closer to the road, and I'm getting, the mayor's looking at me perplexed.
Yeah, so can you clarify exactly where that would be?
Okay, so Fireman's Park is a section of actual roadway. It's the end of Commercial Street. So right in front of Pasquale Tees, there's this little thoroughfare that goes between, I think it's Washington. Is Washington?
Yes.
Yeah, Washington and Commercial.
So that little
Or Lincoln-
street
Lincoln at that
that goes
Yeah, that-
right
that
in front of
little-
the now chain linked space. No?
No, I'm sorry.
Between Cafe de Lucia's and the old fire station.
Oh, that side.
So-
Okay, where people take pictures and stuff.
Right.
What-
If you're looking
got it,
down the hill in
got it.
Commercial at the old fire
Yeah.
station there's a little section of roadway. Actually,
Yes.
It's actually quite a large expanse of asphalt that's pretty underutilized. And closing that area
Okay,
off
got it.
and turning that into a park, which is part of a plan that goes back into the 90s for the Old Town and downtown area. So they would like to work to implement that plan moving
Okay.
forward. So staff has gone to some of our currently contracted design professionals and said, can we get a proposal together? And so at this point, I have one proposal and I'm waiting on a second, which was supposed to come in on Friday, but they said they were delayed. Otherwise, I would confirm that we have 2. At that point, I'll be bringing those proposals to the district to have them provide direction to us on how they want to move forward. If they want to move forward with one of the design professionals, which includes design, engineering, the whole visualization, they would like to see a water feature there of some sort and putting all those pieces into play. We would obviously put together a proposal later on that had phasing in it or different schedules so that if we reached our maximum threshold with the amount of money that we had, that we could cut some of the items and still have a workable product for the outdoor area there in the Old Town. So it is my hope again that the first or the second meeting in October will be coming forward to you with a change order to one of those contracts so we can get that done. So rest assured, city manager is working on those items. I know they've been sitting on our budget for a while. We are under deadline to get funds moving. It was originally given to or directed towards the districts, Old Town and downtown business districts. And so we're using them as our mechanism to get these funds moving and get a project done in a timely fashion. So.
And remind me, we have to have the money spent by fiscal year 25, 26. Is that correct?
I believe it's
26.
26.
Okay, so it has to be spent by June 30th, 2026.
We have to have it programmed, I believe, 2024 is when we have to have it
Programmed in 2024,
and then
but
have it
spent by
2026.
2026. Okay.
And
Program.
my close.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Okay, program by June 30, 2024 and spent by June 30, 2026. Thank you.
I've made it very clear to everybody that we're not sending money back to the Fed, so.
That's right.
if-
We are not.
And so if we don't have anything moved forward, then we'll figure out what to do with it ourselves.
We will spend it somehow.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. We will not let that go to waste.
That we will name the goat. No.
All right.
And keep McDaniels.
All
All
right.
right.
Anyway, that concludes staff report. There's no questions.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Any questions quickly? Yes,
Two quick
Councilwoman.
questions. For the downtown wayfinding, has there been discussion about ensuring that it aligns with our new branding efforts? So if we're gonna have signage that it kind of goes along with whatever that is that we end up coming up with?
So the RFQ that was, or RFP that was put together was specific to placement and design insofar as the sizing of so you could see it at certain
Not
distances.
Okay.
We left the graphics intentionally out, knowing that this would be another phase in that effort.
Great.
And actually that was important to the district too.
Perfect. And then on the Old Town Fireman's Park, has there been any conversation about having something that kids could participate in or do? It's really hard in Old Town to have something for kids that's not necessarily in a street.
They wanted to have, the district wanted to have something with the water feature to have some type of interactive play where kids could actually be a part of whatever it is. whether
That would be great.
touching or something like that. They really wanted to have that as a draw as well.
Okay,
And
perfect.
it might
That
be a
sounds great.
phased thing, just given.
Yeah, as long as it's in the plan. It's just, there's been a lot of requests for more things for families to be able to do with their kids in Old
Right.
Town.
And depending on what the funding looks like, it may be running conduit and plumbing to the site and then worrying about fundraising later through the district and so
Mhm.
forth. But we're definitely looking at that.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Jonathan? All right. Thank you very much for the report. Appreciate it very much. I really do appreciate that because I had some questions. So thank you so much for that. Okay, council, without objection, I'd just like to have a quick 5-minute recess. So that shall be the order. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
That shall be the order. Let's see whether you like it or not. Yeah.
Yeah, you lost control.
No, never. Never. Oh, yeah, that was in your box. Yeah. Yes. Oh, to the fair? You know what? I didn't get a VIP ticket to the fair. I don't. What dinner?
Oh, you mean to
What-
the buyer's dinner?
What?
You're cooler than the rest of them.
Wow. Yes. Oh, that's interesting. Oh. We'll have to talk about that offline. Let's chat about that offline. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for a brief recess. We're going to move on to the agenda item number 17. This is consideration of the fiscal year 2023-24 committees, commissions, budget requests. Sean, this is your item.
Yep. Can you hear me good? Okay.
Yep.
Y'all can hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. So I'm going to try to croak through this without getting too hoarse and my voice completely failing me. In your staff report before you, there's staff recommendation. I'm going to actually make a modification to the staff recommendation. So previously I said that it should come back with a resolution, depending on what direction y'all go. I don't think there's a need to actually bring back a resolution to finalize council's direction tonight. So the staff recommendation at this point is just to let me know what you want to do tonight with these different funding options, and then approve those by motion. That'll approve the budgetary and work plan items as appropriate. There's not really a reason to bring back an actual resolution.
Sorry, so it was just, it's a little, I think we heard you, but we just want to make sure what you were saying is that you don't need to have a secondary action where this goes back to you and then comes back to us, that we can just take that action tonight.
Yeah, right,
Oh.
exactly.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Okay.
that. All right.
So, so each year the council appropriates funds from the general fund in support of the city's commissions and committees. Fiscal year 23-24 budget included all the commission and committee requests for a total of $209,000. That included all the funding requests, but the exception of the $50,000 requested by the Economic Development Committee for the second phase of the branding effort by North Star. So you'll recall that that was moved into Economic Development Department itself. And so that's been subtracted out from this discussion. It does show up because we didn't have a modified version of their request, but it has been taken out. It should be noted that each of these committees and commissions that we're discussing tonight, they're established as advisory to the council. So they don't have spending authority, contracting authority. They can't actually issue a grant. The grants have to come to council for approval. And so the only authority that they have is what the enabling resolutions provide them or what council gives direction to them to do. So during the June 2023 budget hearings, we talked about these, and council gave me direction to bring back each request with an analysis of how that request fits in with our enabling resolutions or the ordinances. And so we did that. It's attached to your staff report as a series of spreadsheets. I also want to point out that we're working on a more streamlined process for this next fiscal year, because I think that we all can agree that it wasn't probably the smoothest way of handling it this past June. And so trying to work through a better process for that. And we'll get through that earlier in the year as well. So rather than going through each individual request, I figured just to provide a little bit of clarity to the discussion, I'd recommend that council only talk about those requests that I flagged on the spreadsheets as being contradictory to the enabling ordinances, or that it's a council like policy decision that needs to be made. So that's the way that the staff report's been laid out. And then I also wanted to point out that after the June budget hearing, the Sustainability Committee revised one of the requests. So it was originally titled Solid Waste Reduction and Organic Waste Stream Reduction. Excuse me, that's the title of it, but it originally included references to SB 1383. And since the city's already working on that issue, and since we've already moved forward with a contract for Pioneer Energy, to address our SB 1383 requirements, the committee removed that language. So the version that's in your packet is different than the version that you heard in June. The only thing that has changed is the language in that one request. So I'm going to move into just discussing in the order of the staff report. And I think it'd be easiest if we could to, after we get done with each individual committee, have a discussion about that. And then you can give me direction on how you want to move forward. Just to make it a little bit
Committee or
easier for me.
each item, because I know you just flagged items for two of the committees, correct? Which is
Right.
Sustainability and the Arts Commission. So
Right.
do you want us to just talk about? Yes, I understand, but do you want us to talk about the issue? Like when you, like, I'm just going to use City Hall lawn replacement, drought tolerant
Yeah.
landscape, and then we talk, you present it, we talk about it, we decide, and we move to the next item, or do you want to do it all?
Let me do all of the each committee individually, and then we'll bring back the discussion on all of the different points in underneath that one committee. So under Sustainability Committee, one of the items requested was the city lawn replacement to drought tolerant permaculture landscape. So this is one of those that's a policy issue for council to decide on. And although the request complies with the enabling resolutions, my recommendation though is for council to hold off on this project until more information can be presented to staff, which is including but not limited to schematics and drawings showing what the project would entail. I asked for, or actually there was already in process, sort of an arborist report to look at whether or not the trees would die if we remove the lawn. So we're waiting for that to come in as well. There's not really any reason to take action on it right now. And once we get that stuff back, we can bring it back to council. So that's where I would recommend that we move on that one. The next one was the educational talk show. Go ahead.
So
Yeah, let's do a point by point.
No, but I just wanted, you said bring it back to council, but before you said that you would just take care of it. Am I hearing it wrong?
I think what he said was that he's asking that we hold off on this. He's recommending.
No, I
that we hold
understand
off,
that
but-
part. Do you want it brought back to council?
Because it's a policy issue for council, if we're going to be modifying the lawn in front of City Hall, that's something that council should decide on, not me.
Okay.
So, again, I'm going to hold my comments and questions until you finish the committee description. So go ahead.
Next one up is the educational talk show on K-High focused on sustainability and the environment. I think that's another one of those policy issues for council to decide on. That the request complies with the enabling resolutions. The only concern would be how there's a message consistent with council's direction would be conveyed. That one could be handled by me on the staff level. If council is okay with moving forward with that project, I could coordinate with the committee to figure out what the kind of messaging is going to be for those individual those shows that would be coming on. But it's an issue that council would need to talk about and give me direction on what you want to do. The next one under sustainability is attendance at events. So educational efforts do comply with the enabling resolutions. The only concern I had was, would we be having multiple branding efforts going on at the same time? If there's water bottles, whatever, that are being put out with the Auburn sustainability logo, and how that would all work together. And then my suggestion was perhaps wait and promotional materials until the city has a consistent branding. I do realize that might end up taking a while. And so I'm not talking about not having the committee members attend events and provide literature and provide informational materials. I do think though that trying to maintain a consistent brand through this process is going to be important. So that was my only concern about that.
John,
Go ahead.
Is it possible for us to make just generally branded Auburn with the current logo that we have that any committee could use, so you don't have to have specifically branded material for each individual committee and commission and those kinds of things?
That's one of the things I was thinking we should be doing.
Okay.
Yeah. And even if you had the the town logo, I mean, the city logo, and then sustainability committee underneath it or something, or sustainable Auburn underneath it, or whatever that is. But to keep it a little bit consistent for the time being.
Yeah, because we're going to be changing them all to a consistent logo.
Right.
once branding's done
Yeah,
anyway.
because I think that affects all committees. I mean, I think.
Well,
endurance
nobody
has-
has swag except for Endurance Capital Committee. That's the only committee that has,
Well,
they're the only ones.
I know.
Yep.
Well, that affects that
Mhm.
committee then.
But if we wanted to have, if other people wanted to.
So
attend a-
I'm going to stop conversation here because our city manager has made it very clear that he wants to go through each committee and then we'll discuss it all. Because I have,
Just that we could go point by point. I'm confused.
no, he said he wants to talk about the committee and then we're going to talk about, you're going to go through
Yeah.
committee and then we're going to.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
'Cause
let me
that was
back
my, I had,
Okay, so I had misunderstood.
yeah.
The last one was promotion of using alternative forms of transportation to get around town. Obviously, that's going to, comply with the ordinances. But by the way, I'll note that in the review of all the different ordinances and resolutions, they're written so broadly that it's pretty difficult to find something that doesn't meet with those. So I just wanted to toss that in there for, so y'all know, but, so the sustainability committee hears from the public wanted safe routes to use alternative transportation, bikes, et cetera. Staff's recommendation, my recommendation on that is that, the committee's discussed using this funding for bike racks throughout the old town and downtown areas. We actually have bike racks that are sitting at the courtyard that haven't been implemented yet. And so we need to get those done. This funding request could go towards that. I do think that if we're going to be putting in bicycle paths, if they're going to be designated bike lanes, then that needs to be done in a more intentional way through the development of the circulation element of the general plan. Caltrans is requiring us, state's requiring us to do stuff like complete streets, which includes separating out bike paths if it's appropriate and if the width of the street accommodates it. So we wouldn't want to start just kind of putting them, like actually marking bike paths in different areas. There has been discussion that I've had with a couple of the folks on the sustainability committee, though, about doing pilot lanes on a couple different roads and looking at whether or not that would fit the width of the roadway. So that is something that we're going to look at. I don't think that conflicts with this. It's as a pilot lane. The thing that we don't want to do is to designate a bike lane and have it be a formally designated bike lane that doesn't meet the state standard, because if, God forbid, somebody get hit, liability for any kind of an accident there. So we don't want to do that. So that's the sustainability committee portion, and I can answer questions about that if you have any.
Okay, thank you very much, Sean. Are there questions on any of these items for the city manager at this time by council members? Any questions on any of these?
Comments, but I don't know.
Okay, so we can also have comments. Are there
Okay.
Sure.
comments?
Yeah,
I have comments.
I have
We
questions.
all have comments.
Yes, we all.
Oh, good.
So,
Wow, no comment.
attaboy. So my comment, you want to hear my comments?
Yes, please, Councilwoman. Proceed.
Okay, might as well start. So I've spoken with Sean this afternoon a lot, and I think we're on the same page on most of these. So my understanding, I just want to be clear then, and I think it was always the intent of sustainability to come back with a schematic and drawings, and I think they're going to do that in-house, and they'll present that to staff. And then, Sean, I think what'll happen is, my understanding is then once you get that, you'll bring it to city council.
Right.
Okay. And I think that's, that was the intent of sustainability. And I think there's some people after that may want to speak to it as well. Educational talks, same thing. That was someone who was interested in that project was going to meet with you, the city manager, and that hasn't occurred. So once that occurs, I think I agree that that's probably a staff level decision. No need for it to come back to city council. I trust the city manager. And with the attendance, that I have a little bit of a concern again, but I think you addressed that in indicating that it should not hold back any of the efforts to basically promote conservation, like at Earth Day, farmers markets, festivals. We want to make our community visible and people
Yeah.
aware of what we are doing to try and promote sustainability within within our community. And I think that, you know, it could be a long time before the branding is completed. So if there is any swag, I agree that it should have some sort of city logo. But again, I think that they should be able to distribute some sort of educational information. And I'm hoping that this will not hold up anything. And again, I think that's something that could be handled in-house by staff. And finally, the bike, other forms of transportation. And I think everybody agrees that we do need a uniform. We've been pushing for that through the circulation element. We do need a uniform work done so that we can have a really uniform, very nice bike friendly town. And that's going to take a lot of time. There was discussion about a little bit of a pilot street and opportunity, and I'm hoping that that can still come. I understand that that is not in conflict with this decision, and that the money requested could go toward bike racks. We do have bike racks, but we've had bike lockers that was brought up, and also signage for bikes. And so I think there's still a lot of opportunity for us to create an awareness of that this town is promoting a bike friendly environment. So, and again, I guess my last question was, is this one that maybe staff can just work on as well? Well, obviously, because the circulation element, so.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
In terms
anyway,
of, in terms of putting out bike racks, right, and where those go,
yeah,
we would want to work with the two different associations, Old Town, Downtown, figure out the best spots for them, because we don't want to, put a bike rack in the middle of, I don't know,
well,
somewhere.
I think part of the money requested was to really solicit a company that would tell us the best place to put bike racks.
Yep.
Because, there's obviously a lot of could be a lot of potential problems with where you place bike
Yeah.
racks. So.
And just as a
And the
reminder,
ones
though,
we have right now are not even utilized. So.
if there was a proposal to use a contractor to make that advice, that would need to come to the city council.
Yep.
We would have to do an RFP or whatever, but just for clarification purposes, that wouldn't be.
Under a certain amount, you need.
Yeah, if it's over 50,000, it would, or
Yeah.
over 40,000.
Under,
If it's under 40, I can do it.
okay, okay.
Yeah. So that's my take on this.
Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in agreement with a lot of what Councilwoman Amara has stated. I'm a little bit since I do work in outreach and education and I have for several cities and municipalities in the past, I just want to make sure that if we're having someone speak on behalf of the city, that they are trained in how to speak on behalf of the city and understand what their talking points in their script are. Even when you are a city employee, normally if you go to speak with media, you're given talking points in the script on what you're supposed to say and kind of some training on how not to say it. so you don't
I think part of it was just to bring guests on too.
Okay, but I just want to make sure that if it's going to be representing the city or it's going to be paid for by the city, that we're representing what the city wants us to represent.
You're talking about
the
the educational talk show.
The educational talk show.
Okay,
So I just wanted to make sure that there's maybe a process that we go through. I know we don't have the staff to be able to do all the educational events and activities that we would like to do. And I appreciate that the volunteers are willing to step up and help. But I also want to make sure that they are not put in a situation where they're saying something they shouldn't have and may, kind of step on toes or something like that. So I just want to make sure that they have the resources that they need in order to do it appropriately. And I think the first thing would be if we don't have someone on staff that can help to do those in the first place, because of course, the first thing that you would want to have is have a staff member representing the city. And if that's not available, then looking for other resources to do that. So if we were talking about possibly having someone help with PR and communications as part-time of one of their roles, that would be a great way for them to represent the city, and then they could take the talking points from the sustainability committee and represent that. So I still think that that person is a spot we're looking to fill. And so hopefully that could help to assist the sustainability committee with getting their message out. So I would look to the city manager to try to do that as the first thing. And then in the events, I am in support of them going to events. Of course, we don't have enough staff to be able to go to everything. And I think it's great to be present at those things. Again, all the material would just need to be okayed by staff. So that way we make sure that it's all appropriately stated and edited, because it has to be, ADA compliant with how you state things. And you need to make sure it's at the right grade level and all those kind of fun things you do in communication with at public events and those kinds of things. But also just making sure that we have, I think that it would be good to have swag that maybe is just general with our City of Auburn logo, because we are one city. We're not necessarily this committee or that committee. If we wanted to maybe put, like that. I think if we wanted to put little labels, sometimes cities have like the general label and then a little line underneath that says Public Works Department or, police department or whatever it is, then that's something we could decide to do, but the city logo should be the main focus of the branding and not necessarily the city, the department or the committee or anything like that. So those are my main thoughts around this. And of course, bikes, I just want to make sure that we're doing things safely and limiting our liability. But I do think that we should have more access for bikes. I think it's great that's part of the circulation element. And I think we should have more bike parking for sure, because we can't park our bike down in downtown and we'd love to. So yeah, so I think that all that stuff is great. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Holmes, do you have any comments or?
Well, yes, a couple that I was going to say that about educational talk show, that Auburn Community TV might be another vehicle for getting the message out about various sustainability and environmental issues. And on K-High, and unfortunately we lost Barry here just recently, and they have been very careful about people just talking off the cuff about various city issues and so forth. So I'm not sure about these e-bikes. Several years ago, we did make some major efforts to designate bicycle routes through the city with signage and so forth. That obviously needs to be improved. And of course, with the bike racks, that may be more. And I guess the use of e-bikes is not just so employees of the city can get around with e-bikes, but the general public as well. So.
Thank you very much, Councilman. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to run through this. I know Councilman Berlant said that he didn't have any comments. So first of all, on the first recommendation with regards to the City Hall lawn replacement to drought tolerant landscape, I agree with the city manager to hold off on this until you have sufficient information to bring a proposal forward to us for discussion. So I agree with your recommendation on that. So I would not support funding that until this council has an opportunity to discuss, debate, and then decide. So I would not fund that right now. I wouldn't approve that item. Educational talk show on K-High, focus on sustainability and the environment. I agree that we need to ensure that the message is consistent with the council's direction, because it is the council that is accountable to the public and the voters. And so if the sustainability committee wants to have a show on K-High, then I would approve that, as long as they coordinated the topics with the city manager to ensure that messaging is on point. And that if there's something that is controversial or what have you, that council members are made aware, because people are going to come to us and say, oh, we heard this, this, and this, and we may not have the opportunity to listen to the show or what have you. So I don't like surprises. And so if they'd like to pursue that, then certainly working with the city manager, I think that's what everyone's pretty much on the same page on that particular item. For attendance at events, I think it's great. The sustainability wants to be present at a variety of different places to get the word out. I don't have a problem with written materials as long as, again, just run them by the city manager. If there's, how best to compost food waste or what have you, things like that, I think are great takeaways. I honestly don't feel it's necessary to have swag, the sustainability committee's logo. We don't do that for Arts Commission or Economic Development or SHAC or anybody else. It's really the city of Auburn. And so if they wanted to give a reusable water bottle away, and we have some of those, that's with the city logo, then that's okay. I just don't think that we need to do separate sustainability committee swag. Again, it is an advisory, and we're working on the branding thing, but I support very much their attendance at events and getting the word out. And so that's good. On the promotion of using alternative forms of transportation, I agree with the city manager with regards to the bike lanes and so forth, and would also be very supportive of the committee working with the city manager to make recommendations on the best place for the bike racks that we have, and if we need to purchase additional ones or what have you. So I'm okay on that end. So Mr. City Manager, I'm gonna open this item up, I guess, for public comment. Let me make sure there was any. Nope, that was it for Sustainability Committee. So those are my thoughts on this particular committee's work plan, and I'll open this up for public comment. Is there public comment on this?
Hi, Glenn Kramer. I'm Secretary of Sustainability Committee, and I'm speaking for Mike, who is in Berkeley tonight at a prior event. I think we're pretty much on the same page here. I think we've always thought it was important that if there's something with regard to the City Hall alterations, that it needs to go to council. And we appreciate the fact that we got some seed funding for the evaluation of the trees so that we could get some of that analysis done. And then also we're counting on in-house help to develop schematics to give the council a full education on this. It's not just drought tolerance, it's permaculture. And that's kind of like drought tolerance on steroids. So I think that would be good to bring it to council so that you have an understanding of it, and then you can make a decision of it. As far as the educational talk shows, we've already talked briefly with Sean, but it was our concept to provide him a list of the topics ahead of time so that the topics, we're not trying to be controversial, we're trying to be educational. So I think that is the focus of our talk show initiative. Attendance at events, it would be nice if we could have our Sustainability Auburn logo underneath, but we're not going to order 1,000, reusable containers. I mean, we could do a small amount if it's okay. I don't know if you want to leave that to staff. And then with regard to the alternative forms of transportation, with regard to the bike racks, I think that fulfills our concept of wanting to get out to the public that we are working and we do care about bikeways, because the circulation element is a long-term project, and pretty much day to day they don't see that. So that was the intent of doing that, and I think we worked well with Sean on being able to realize that with the bike racks, and also the alternative experimental bike lane concept on Pacific.
And I'd like that to come back to the council before we approve something like that, just because, again, liability issues and so forth. But the bike racks thing, I think you're on point. So, thank you.
Did you have any other questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Any other public comment on this item? So I'm going to bring this back for direction. I think that it sounds like the Sustainability Committee has pretty much echoed the statements that I have made with regards to these items that were, and I'll just reiterate them again for the council so that everybody's clear, so that we don't have any questions. But on the City Hall lawn replacement, drought tolerant land, the permaculture landscape, that at this point in time, it's with staff and they're doing some due diligence. And then when it's the appropriate time, they will bring something forward to us for consideration. So we're not approving anything we're not going to approve that yet. That's coming before the council. That will come before the council. So that has not been formally approved at this time. The educational talk show on K-High sounds like we're all in agreement that it's fine to move forward as long as there is coordination with the city manager on topics and points and things of that nature to make sure that the messaging is consistent. And I didn't really mean controversial. What I meant, for example, if someone were to go on and say, the city of Auburn believes that nobody should have a gas engine vehicle effective tomorrow or in 2 years, or making some kind of a statement like that. That's what I mean. That the council hasn't taken action on something like that, but encouraging sustainability and encouraging it and putting it in the light that it's education and encouragement as opposed to requiring something or putting a mandate, because that would have to have action by the council. But sounds like we're on the same page on that. The attendance at the events, again, I think everybody's consistent with that it's fine for the Sustainability Committee to attend events. And, if there's going to be some written material just to work with city manager on, that, and then maybe to hand out water bottles that we already have or things of that nature versus having additional swag. And then the promotion and using alternative forms of transportation, again, focusing efforts on the appropriate and best placement of our bike racks. And just making sure, again, that the council is in the loop on that. So if a contractor is recommending that 2 bike racks be placed here or there, what have you, just to ensure that the council knows exactly, where those locations are and when they'll be placed. So no surprises for us, so that when we get a question asked, we don't, what are you talking about? We had no idea that was going to go there.
Madam Mayor, can I ask one question about for the swag piece of it? I think there are some things that the Sustainability Committee objects that they might want to promote that kind of promote sustainability that wouldn't be necessarily something that we would have our swag, our logo on. So are we allowing them to use that budget to put the Auburn logo on things that they feel are more eco-friendly or environmentally friendly that they might want to promote? Or because those water bottles are not great environmentally.
No,
so I'm just trying to make sure that we're allowing them to have the right branding on the objects that fit their needs, as long as they stay within their budget.
Yes, I just think that the having swag that promoted the committee wasn't necessary.
Yeah, it would just have the Auburn brand on it, but it just would be maybe objects that maybe are more sustainable.
Okay.
Because I'm not all the things that we put out there. Some of them are tchotchkes and stuff, which aren't great sustainable.
I understand. So if there is for example, a card that's is something that you can plant, like a card that has seeds in it or something.
Something.
I think
whatever
we're kind of getting into the minutia
Yeah.
here.
No, I'm just
I think that's why we have a city manager. I think he'll keep an eye on things.
I know. I just want to make sure we're not by this limiting them that they have to use what we've already produced.
No, I think the statement simply was that we're not creating additional swag necessarily for one particular committee, but they'll definitely work with the city manager with regards to the materials, educational materials and so forth. It's really a small
We have to be
amount. It's
consistent
2,000.
in our message. We can't have other committees creating more
Absolutely.
swag either.
I agree with that. The difference with the endurance committee is that its charge is to promote endurance capital of the world. And so this charge is an advisory sustainability committee. They're not promoting themselves so much as they're promoting the city of Auburn.
But by the name, you are promoting sustainability.
I understand.
And
but-
anyway, I don't want to get into
Yeah,
that.
I don't either. I think that what we're saying is that, again, working with staff and getting out, educational materials is a good thing. I have no problem with educational materials and how to best compost and what light bulbs are best to use and things of that nature, I think are great. And so I appreciate the Sustainability Committee's desire to move forward in those educational efforts. So with that said, I think that summarizes the discussion that we've had, the understanding of the Sustainability Committee and the direction provided by our city manager. So do you need us to take a motion?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to do a separate motion for each committee, so that way we have.
Okay.
It's kind of
So
bracketed in.
how, I just said a whole bunch.
I'd like to make a motion for what Alice just said.
Or Amy.
Second.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think that you can make a motion on the budget request line item and then additionally provide direction has been provided by the mayor if that is the consensus direction of the council.
So the only thing that would be minused out of there right now would be around the lawn, and then
lawn.
that the opportunity to come back if they would like to.
Yes. And well, and the other thing is, I don't know if they need $5,000 for the bike racks.
They do.
Oh, for the
Not
bike racks.
necessarily that they'll spend it all, but I think that's because there's the plans, there's the, again, signage, there's other related components that. they-
Okay, just as long
Yeah,
as
and just the installation,
bike
figuring out where they need to
things
go.
of that nature.
And the city manager would have to approve all those costs anyway. So
Yes.
he would be verifying. that
Okay,
that
as
is-
long as we don't get things like this.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve the Sustainability Committee's budget minus the lawn project.
I'll take it back.
Does that work? Is that okay for a motion?
I'm sorry. Would you please?
But with the opportunity to work with,
Oh,
staff.
they can come back for sure. But right now, all we're approving is the budget for the Sustainability Committee minus the amount for the lawn and the lawn.
Well, I think yeah, we're approving, we've already approved the budget. So the budget's been approved. Really, it's just approving.
The work plans.
It's really approving the work plan as discussed.
I agree.
I would like to motion to approve the work plan as discussed minus the lawn improvement project.
There we go.
Second.
Okay, so
Thank
it's
you for
been
that.
moved and seconded. So the budget adjustment, just speaking to the motion in the second, is that we would just reduce the budget by the $6,600 at this time because we're not approving the lawn. So, okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any public comment? Do you have something to say?
But that doesn't mean that we can't work on it in committee, correct? With regard to the
lawn issue?
lawn.
What that means
We're
is
not
that
going to spend any money.
what that just means at this point in time is that the city manager, you guys are working on something, and when the city manager feels it's prudent to come forward with a proposal, then that'll come to the council. So,
Yep.
but all the coordination goes through him. So just, we're good. All right. Any additional public comment? All right, Madam Clerk, please call a roll.
Councilmember Mara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye, and let the record show that the motion has been adopted unanimously. And I am looking forward to a smoother ride next budget session. I think, developing work plans early, like, March.
That's what I was
Really
thinking.
talk about these things before the budget is proposed so that the committees know what the council wants to do or doesn't want to do. So we're not wasting their time either. This has just
Yep.
been very cumbersome for all of us. And so having that process start much earlier will be to all of our benefits. So that
Yep,
we're all
agreed.
together and we can go on our merry way. Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Okay, we'll move to the next committee, Auburn Arts Commission.
So there's three on this one. The first one is the council chamber stage. So the Arts Commission's asking to be able to use the stage more often for performing arts. Apparently, staff was given direction back in November. Obviously, I wasn't here then, and I didn't know about this direction, but staff was given direction back in November to work with the Arts Committee or the Arts Commission on bringing something back to council. So, my recommendation at this point would be to just give direction to staff to get that done and bring it back and discuss it. There's some issues with building security that we've been working through and trying to figure that out, so we don't have people just kind of wandering throughout the whole building. But that's something that we can work through and shouldn't be an issue. So we'll get working on that. The next one is miscellaneous public art projects. This is a I had this down as a new project request. It's actually not. It's a continuing thing that has been in their budget before. So it's setting aside $1,500 for miscellaneous projects that come up during the year. There's no issue with the enabling resolutions on that. It's not necessarily a policy issue for council to decide on at this point because it's been done before. But I would point out that this $1,500 could also go towards things like repair of art that is throughout town that we are throughout the city now that we're not maintaining. What it seems, like the salmon sculpture is a perfect example. That sculpture has been broken and it continues to get worse, but we haven't identified an actual funding source to fix that. I've had discussions with with April Maynard about this. She's also offered to reach out to the artist, and apparently Dr. Bill Kirby's daughter has also offered to help in some way. So I just need to get back into City Hall so I can get that moving forward. But down the road next year during the budget cycle, I would like to look at increasing that dollar amount because we need to start maintaining the art that we have. Otherwise, we're going to get in a position where it's deteriorated to the point where we can't fix it. And then the third is recommendation for financial support of the arts organizations and venues. This was put in. I misread this apparently, according to April, who made sure to tell me that. And so I put this in as a basically saying that the organizations that she had listed on their request are already going through the discretionary grant process. She wasn't recommending that they receive money through the Arts Commission, but she was noting that those organizations are obviously very important to the community, which I certainly agree with 100%. So that's the only three that we have for the Arts Commission.
We had the grant request fund though, too, right? So it wasn't just the discretionary grants, the $20,000 that is already separate, but there were the other grants. So
Right.
Right. The $20,000.
Right. And from my perspective, the idea of the Arts Commission providing grants to local artists I don't see that as a policy issue, and I don't really see it as an issue that conflicts with the ordinances and the resolutions. If council wants to talk about that, obviously we should.
As long as it's the council that's awarding the grants. So
Exactly.
would be
Exactly.
Council because of the conflict of interest issues we have, right? So
Exactly. The committees and commissions can't award grants because they don't follow the same conflict of interest rules that we have.
Mhm. Yeah, they're not compliant with Form 700 FPPC.
Right.
Thank you. Are there questions for the city manager on any of these items? Okay. So, April?
I think the city manager covered the issues that were in his staff report. And with respect to the grant process, on May 31st, we did submit a grant policy packet and had hoped to get that approved and hopefully it will be. But yeah, we understand that everything would have, it's modeled after the EDC policy, which we were kind of waiting to be consistent with. So that's why it waited until May to be finalized, but it's been in everybody's hands now for a few months.
EDC grants come to the council, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So unless there's questions,
All right. And
we're on the same page.
council, do you have any questions for April at this time?
No.
Okay, thanks. April.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for comments. I am going to start for the Arts Commission. With regards to the stage item, I am, again, I agree with the city manager. We have referred this item to staff. And so at this time, I would not approve the work plan to include that at $10,000 just because staff need to come back to us on that item. So very similar to the lawn. So this is a lawn restoration. With regards to the miscellaneous public art projects, city manager is recommending that we approve that. And I agree. I think that is fine. And I've always talked about the need to set aside a little bit of funds for repair and maintenance of some of the artwork. So that's in line with that as well. That's $1,500 allocation. with regard to the grant request fund, I agree with the city manager. I'm fine with the $20,000 for that particular program, given that the grants will be ultimately decided upon by the city council. So those are my comments. And I'll open it up for other comments before we take action on this in public. If we have any, also, I should ask if there's any additional public comment. We had April, but that was it. Is there any additional public comment I should ask really quick? Hearing none. Okay. Okay. Council members, do you have any additional comments? Yes.
Not a quick. I'm in support of all of these things, minus the council chamber stage. And the main thing for me is that I still have some very high concerns about people being in the building late at night and having access to the building. I was the one who brought this up originally. Where I worked one time, the Model Airplane Club was the one who ended up having a shooting in our building. So you never know. And we just want to make sure that our staff is safe and that we know who's in the building. And I don't know if that requires them to hire PD to be in the building or what that is, but we don't have a building that's really set up to keep this room separate from the other rooms very well. And so I just want to make sure that that issue is addressed before as you bring this back, because that's my main concern. If this was a totally different room, you could lock off from the rest of the building, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But there's a lot of access to this room from all different places, and you can kind of get around to all different parts of the building from this room. So that was my main concern that you address before you bring it back. Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm going to say the opposite of the two of you. I don't have I share the same concern about addressing the security items, but I don't necessarily see a reason why it needs to come out of their work plan or the funding component of it. I think that allowing the commission to continue to work with the city manager. As I said, when this item was brought to us originally, this is a place for government business. Specifically, this room is for us and the planning commission to ensure that those are the priorities. But the rest of the time it sits here empty. And in many cases, there is ongoing maintenance issues that have been deferred that I think actually could value having some additional usage. Again, I completely agree with Councilwoman Riddell Harris. We keep really important documents literally right next door. The safety of our employees, though, I have to assume we're talking about after hours. And so who's here, I think is an important part of this discussion, because let's remember that during the day, anybody can come in here and threaten our employees. And so that should be a concern all day long. But I, for one, am supportive of at least putting together a plan to look at what that might look like. And again, I think it's as mentioned here, it is a council policy discussion, but I think we need to allow the commission and the new city manager to really dive into a deeper conversation of what that might look like, so we can have an informed discussion about the security, about the concerns, about the priorities of our community, because the truth is there's really not other options for this size type of theater spaces for performances and other things. So I'm supportive of leaving it in.
And I have something to say.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And I want to second that. I'm very supportive. I think it's an opportunity. I look at it as an opportunity to have a group come and use this. And I think it's the public's venue and they pay for it. And so safety and security is utmost importance. But again, I think those can be addressed. There's a lot of businesses that open up their places of work to house different groups. And I think we should be one of those. So I'd be supportive of that, of at least a work plan, and to work with our city manager so that we can put together a very good, secure and safe opportunity for these people to utilize this space when it's not being used, and to have a calendar.
Councilman Holmes, do you have any comments?
Well, I did notice that these chambers are going to be used for another meeting for another group here in the next day or so. What?
It's for the theater group.
You wanted to use it a couple nights a week for rehearsal and then weekends for.
I think council, before we go really in, too far down this issue here, is that we recognize that we have already given direction to staff, and it's just, Sean is new, so he wasn't aware, and we had a discussion about this. But we've already asked staff to look into this matter. And so this is really with staff. And so I just want to treat it the same way as we're treating the sustainability's lawn replacement, that this is with staff. And when it's the appropriate time to come to us with a recommendation, then we can have deliberate and discuss and have public comment and talk about the pros and cons and all of that and do all of that at that time. And so that's why I don't recommend the $10,000 in the budget, because we didn't put it in there for the lawn. Right? We took the $6,600 out until which time the council takes official action on whether or not it wishes to use the chambers. We're not really discussing the use of the chambers tonight. Again, this is before staff. There's a lot more information that we need to have before we can make a determination on that. So that was why I just wanted to be fair, and that's what we did with Sustainability Committee. So I wanted to do the same thing with the Arts Commission. Doesn't prevent the Arts Commission from talking with staff and deliberating and getting that, but not approving anything until the council actually takes action. That's all. Not funding it until we've taken action. So, Councilman Holmes, did you want to make some additional comments?
Well, yes, I would not be opposed to maybe have some performance here during the daytime. But I am concerned about evening, particularly repeated over a couple of weeks.
And we'll have that opportunity to discuss all of those concerns
Yes,
and
yeah.
many others when this comes back to the council, because we've asked staff to take a look at this. And so staff will, and it'll come back to us, and then we will either approve it or not. And if we approve it, then we can approve the $10,000 or whatever amount is appropriate at that time. But we'll have a robust discussion on the use of the chambers at an alternate time based on the direction that we've already taken as a council.
Madam Mayor, if I can just clarify, I agree with you completely, and I would agree to making sure that we're consistent in it. There was a comment though previously that was to remove the item from the work plan. And that's what I want to ensure, just like you just clarified, we're not removing this item from their work plan. We're removing the funding connected to it until there's a discussion. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's just so that it's consistent with the Sustainability Committee. So we're not saying they can't work with staff. So that would still remain, having that ability to work with staff. It's just not moving forward with the proposal until the council's taken action.
But just to be clear, the funding.
Yes, the
not
funding's taken out.
The topic in their work plan.
They can still talk about it with the city manager and get that to us. There's not a problem there. But that does not mean that the council is approving the use of the stage for that purpose. It just means that there are discussions going on, and then we will deliberate and make a vote.
So just to be a little clearer, I understand with the lawn, you need more of a schematic and you have to
Yes.
see drawings, but with this particular item, are we asking for a security plan and a calendar? and
What we
is
did
that
is
what you're
there was a whole bunch of discussion about
Mhm.
all kinds of things. If you'll remember, they wanted to use the chambers quite a bit. I don't remember the details. There were multiple performances, multiple practices. There was food in the chambers. There was all kinds of things. What would the chambers look like? There's a million different aspects. And so I encourage our city manager to go back and listen to that
Yeah.
meeting or to get the minutes, because we had a healthy discussion about this.
Okay, so should we
so-
be a little clear on what he wants, or do you just want him, we just want him then to go back and
I
listen
think that
and-
he'll go back and he'll listen and he'll hear what we brought up, because there was a lot of discussion about this item. If he needs additional information from us, he will come to us and ask for that at a council meeting or what have you.
Perfect.
I
Yeah.
really believe
I-
that if he needs additional information, he knows where to get it.
Yeah, I need to go back and listen to the discussion and see what the direction was to the previous staff, and then I can bring it forward from there. I will say that we're working with the police chief to figure out ways to kind of shore up the security in the building, not only like for if the council chambers are going to be used at night for something, but also just really during the daytime, so we don't have people kind of wandering around. There's a couple different things that we're looking at, and so we've been working through that.
And the proposal also included using the Rose Room as a green room. And so there was just a whole bunch. So that's why we asked staff, we directed staff to take a look at it and to work with the Arts Commission. So, all right. Okay, Mr. Holmes, are you finished with your comments?
Yes.
Okay, so like I did with the last item, I'm just going to go through very quickly so that we are all on the same page. With regards to the stage, we are not approving funding at this time. This is with staff, and the Art Commission can continue to work with staff until it's appropriate to bring an action item before us. With regards to the miscellaneous public art projects, that $1,500, there's a consensus that we're fine with that being in the work plan. And then the grants, we're also fine with that as long as the grants are ultimately coming to the council, which they shall for the purposes of being awarded. So that is the work plan. Those were the 3 items that were earmarked for discussion by the council at this time. So like we did with sustainability, do we have a motion to approve the work plan as amended based on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the work plan as amended. That work?
That's been moved and seconded, and that just confirms again that we're taking the $10,000 out like we did the lawn at this time. All right. Any public comment or any other discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call a roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show the motion has been adopted. So thank you very much. I think that's it, right, Mr. City Manager? The rest
Yeah,
of
because the Economic Development Commission one has already been dealt with through the budgeting process. So that
Okay.
is it.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much. And again, we're looking forward to a more streamlined process going forward.
Yes,
So
yes.
thank you so much on that. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is item number 18. This is the request for proposal for energy services contract and or investment grade audit at city-owned facilities. Sean, are you taking this item or is this Gary?
This will actually be Jonathan.
Jonathan?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. I am the person standing at the podium, but don't get me wrong. Gary, Mengel, anybody, just about everybody in this room is. So yes, there may be some pointing at other folks as we go through this. I would like to point this out. This is a council member, or 2 council members have requested this be brought forward. And so it is really their item to boot. Happy to provide. Staff is per the request. Staff has provided information in a staff report, which we can address should the motion be made to move this item forward. So at this point, it's your discussion.
I'll go.
Sure.
But I think our city manager might want to weigh in on this.
And it actually was 4 members of council that brought this because Mike and I brought the part that was bringing back the ESCO model versus the putting it in the budget.
Financing.
So there were,
That's why I was giggling of why my name was here, because I was like, what did I?
yeah, so there's more.
I was on vacation, so.
Okay.
There's different things going on. There's different
Lots of parts.
solutions to the same problem that are being talked about.
Yeah, so let me give kind of like a high level overview. I'll let Gary talk about how we got to where we're at and why it's coming back. But just to give like a kind of like a snapshot of what we're looking at from council, what we're looking from you for. So there's 3 proposed recommended actions. The first one is by motion to move to rescind the motion from June 12th to not include the solar installation project in the budget for police department and carport project with funding out of reserves. Council can make that motion if you want. Gary and I haven't talked a whole lot about this, but I don't think that that's really necessary yet. The next one is, I think, the most important for council to consider, which is by one or more motions and direct staff to draft a request for proposal and recruit energy services companies to develop an energy services contract or investment grade audit at all city-owned facilities, such as, and then he's got the different facilities there. I wouldn't limit it to those, though. I think that we should look at all of our facilities. And then the third is by one or more motion, direct staff to bring back a future item to amend the 23-24 budget to include the cost of the energy services contract, et cetera, et cetera. I think that one's probably a little bit premature. We did put it in there if council wants to make that action and move things forward more quickly. But I don't know how you would direct staff to bring back a budget amendment without knowing what the budget amendment is going to end up being. So those are the staff recommended actions. I'll turn it over to Gary to talk about kind of like the procedural history, how we got where we're at. And then between Jonathan and I, we can kind of fill in the background on the ESCO process and all that.
Mayor and council members. So the council has special procedures that were adopted in 2014. They allow two council members to request an agenda item be brought forward. At least two of you did. I suppose different pieces of it sounds like could have been attributed to other council members, but we did name at least two. So that was the basis for bringing this back forward. We did have the clerk with her great assistance going back through all the different motions for this. As you'll recall, there were lots of different special meetings that started earlier this year. The clerk actually went through all of that and compiled all the different motions that were together so that we could have a clear sense of what was actually done, what would be needed to be done in order to move forward with the requested action item here. So that is why the June 12th motion is specifically called out here. So the reason why it's on the agenda for this evening, moving forward with the RFP process, which is the second motion here, does not commit you to any particular thing. So if the council were to move forward with the second authorization, direct staff to proceed with a request or proposal, you're not authorizing a contract. That would come back at some future date. There would be a request for proposal that would include an energy services contract, an investment grade audit, and or design and construction at one or more of the sites here, or even conceivably additional sites as we've expanded this to include all city facilities. That motion doesn't require at this moment that you undo the June 12th motion. However, if that motion includes anything related to the police department later on, you would have to undo it at some point. So we have included it here because as a practical matter, it's best to be upfront about that because you need to undo that motion in order to proceed with the police station on the other items. And because it might just be easier to do it now if the council direction is to proceed with police station piece of this as to the second. For the budget adjustment, that too can be brought back at a later date. This is simply a motion to direct staff to come back at a future time when it is clearer from the direction that you give on what the budget implications would be. Staff, your administrative services director would be able to put together some recommendation on a budget adjustment or some other financing mechanism for this. So that third item is really about directing staff to do that, put that into the work plan, make sure that some future item comes back once you have a sense of what those dollar amounts would be. At this point, though, you're not amending the budget because we don't know what those costs are because that depends on the conversation that you're going to have this evening. The process for contracting, there are different terms here. So we talked about ESCO, the federal energy department has a process. Here in California, we're operating under state statutes that use slightly different terms. We've used a procedure that was discussed earlier, but I'll just go over it briefly here. There's a provision in the government code that allows you to follow a procedure that's different than what you would normally follow for public works contracts. You can contract with a single firm for analyzing, designing, and installing the project under an energy services contract. That's different than the process you normally have to follow. And that's the process that's outlined in the staff report should you choose to do that. It's not the only option available to you. You could use traditional contracting for this. That would require separate firms for the process. There would be someone to design and analyze it, and there would be someone to install it, which is the typical process that's used for a variety of reasons. Before awarding a contract under that procedure, the procedure that allows designing and also constructing, the city council must hold a public hearing that is noticed before awarding that contract. So if you chose to follow that procedure and use the request for proposal process, there'd be a solicitation based on the scope that the council authorizes this evening. Proposals would come in. If you're using a single contractor to do all of the work, there would be a single contract for all of it, start to finish. Awarding of that contract would require a notice public hearing that staff would take care of and bring this back at a future meeting. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for the city attorney? Yes.
Good question. Similar to how we ended up in a kind of a difficult situation with solar, if we picked a contractor to do like the audit and then we wanted to use them later to do the installing of things, would we have to include that all together, or else they'd be disallowed from participating in the RFP for the other work?
Correct.
Just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, Council.
I have a question. I understand that the wastewater treatment plant, there is a solar installation there that is not included in this. Is there a reason for that?
The city has a long-term contract with a third party to manage that particular location. So it probably would be part of an investment grade audit should the council direct that. But we did take a look at that contract as part of this process earlier this year. I believe it's for 20 years. There was a period of time for the city to evaluate that, which is passed. And so that contract is in place and the third party is operating it. It doesn't mean you couldn't expand it. If you chose to expand at that facility, we would look at that contract and make sure that you're not interfering in any way of the third party's contractual rights there.
And just to remind Councilman Holmes that when the council voted to move forward with the NEM applications, the wastewater treatment plant was not included.
Yes. Yeah.
So we took that off the table then. Are there other questions? I have some questions. So are there any? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. So if we if we put it out for an RFP, it would go out for an RFP for an investment grade audit, which would be inclusive. This is one possibility, and it would be inclusive of all city facilities, which, you know, you've stated here, and also all locations within the city. Like we can look at lighting, HVAC systems, and that sort of thing. Then they would come back. They would give us a complete analysis along with a certain cost, and then from there we choose whichever company, and then with that company we have to work with do a contract and have them do the whole thing based on that audit. Is that correct?
If one firm did the audit, they would not be able to do the later stages of it. So if you would like the same firm to do all of it, including the audit, design, and install, then all of that would need to be included in the RFP. So
Okay.
there isn't a strict rule on how you proceed or how you sort of divide this up, right? So the council could say, we want an RFP for an investment grade audit. That's what we're authorizing tonight. An investment grade audit comes back. As a matter of contracting procedures, whoever does that investment grade audit could not then contract at the later stages that come out of that audit. So then you could decide to use that audit as a basis to contract with some other firm.
But
Okay.
it's just so you know, for this type of model, it's not really cost effective for businesses,
Right.
for this kind of business to do that.
Right.
But the thing about it is if you contract all the way through, there's nothing that says that you have to proceed with any piece of that
Right.
they decide to do. So you could pick them for the whole project. They do the audit and then maybe you do a not to exceed, but you don't say what has to be done. And so you can say, we choose 3 of the 5 projects you recommend, kind of. a thing.
Right. That's what I was trying to elicit.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
just
But
clear it up.
everybody can have a clear understanding.
I agree.
Staff, I mean, my recommendation from staff's perspective on this is for you to give direction to us to issue the RFP that includes all of it, right? So let's look at doing the to recruit the energy services contract, which would possibly and probably include an energy grade audit, and then have that same that same company do it, the project from soup to nuts. So we release the RFP, we choose a contractor if we're going to move forward, choose a contractor that prepares all the stuff. There's no obligation for us to move forward with anything, assuming that the RFP is written that way, which it will be. And then go through, have all the city facilities looked at, do a holistic view of how we can save energy in all the different buildings and including solar on top of that, because if you just do the solar pieces separately, you're not saving as much money as you potentially could because you're not doing any of the other energy efficiency stuff that we need to be looking at. So you would be upsizing potentially the solar facilities for higher than what you would actually need because you're not doing anything to decrease the energy load in the first place.
And also, I think you might be upsetting the ESCO process if you divide it up. Really having one contractor run the whole thing. I mean, that's where they come in. They do their own audit. They come up with the plan to move those things forward. And the whole purpose to this ESCO process is they say that they guarantee the results and they're budget neutral. And so that's a really important thing when you're looking at several $1 million worth of investment, maybe multiple millions of dollars worth of investment. So having them run the process and come up with the outcomes and then guarantee those outcomes, then the city's left in the position of just finding the financing and figuring out how we're going to do this. Now, Gary said, you know, when you look at the budget, whatever, most of these, because of the size of them, are going to require, you know, significant amount of funding. So we're looking at probably taking some debt service on. Part of the obligation to this company would be to cover that amount of debt service, those annual payments, with the amount of savings. So we have, again, budget neutral going forward. And that's one of the things that's most appealing about this. We heard a lot of conversation in the past about the solar, the cost, you know, what's the return on investment. Here we have something that we can look at as a holistic approach to upgrading our facilities, to looking at all those things that are out there. And at the same time going, okay, and we want you to hand this to us on a platter that says that we're not going to pay anything more than what we are.
And so it's guaranteed savings for us.
The savings, they're whatever the results are they come up with, they are obligated to uphold those. They have to produce those results, which would then play into our funding mechanism, our financing, looking at debt service payments and how those would be offset by that. So that'd be a whole conversation. Staff's already reached out to Wells Fargo, which is our current bank, just to get an idea of funding or financing right now and what that might look like. But again, you're not under any obligation. You're giving direction, and then it enables staff to come back to you with more information.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Can I get a status report? We approved solar installation at the Courtyard. I'm just wondering where we're at with that.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Manjul Dean, Public Works Manager. Happy to report that the project has been, for all intents and purposes, completely installed. We're just waiting on the shut-off date, which we're anticipating it's going to be this Saturday. We're choosing to do it on the weekend, as opposed to when staff is actually at the Courtyard needing to use the power. We're going to shut it off and get the PG&E connectivity in place, and then we should be up and running.
Okay, so this weekend. Okay, thank you very much.
That is the plan as of now.
Also, with the request for proposal going out, asking for the investment grade audit at all city owned and operated facilities. And then also the recommendation for how we can take energy conservation efforts, whether it be replacement of HVAC, solar, whatever. We can include in that RFP the cost of maintenance for all, like, for example, solar and things of that nature, correct? Because, if the city were to install solar, there is maintenance and so forth. And I would be interested in that being incorporated in the contract. Is that?
It would be our process. So
We would because I think that I didn't see that in here, but to me, that's important. It's not just asking the RFP for the energy or the IGA and the recommendations for energy conservation efforts, but also the maintenance of any of the equipment that is installed as a result.
We could check with the ESCOs. From what I know, they don't normally do maintenance, but we could do a concurrent RFP at the same time asking for a maintenance agreement. There are separate companies that normally do solar maintenance, so that might.
So because my point is that we need to also consider what the cost of maintenance, is for the equipment. I don't know, again, an IGA is going to tell you all kinds of things. And, we saw an informal IGA that was done that talked about the city purchasing 1,000 streetlights. And I think about what kind of maintenance does that mean? We don't have staff to do that. I would want to know what the cost would be to perform those maintenance tasks. So if we can somehow incorporate that into the RFP or what have you, I don't know if it needs to be concurrent, but maintenance needs to be included here. We have that solar installation at the wastewater treatment plant. It's not functioning properly. We've got issues with it. Staff are not. Mengel can do a lot. But, trying to get up there and figure out how to repair that is not something that is within his wheelhouse. Not mine either. So I just think that's very important. And again, I just want to reiterate here, the intent is to receive several different proposals from vendors who would say, we're doing it, we would do this energy audit. Okay, wait, let me see. I get back to this. It's getting late. So we're going to go out for this request for proposal. And then these vendors are actually going to do an IGA. And they're going to make recommendations on energy conservation efforts. And then they're going to tell us how much that would cost, including maintenance. That's correct? And so we would ultimately get, when we do this RFP, we could potentially get 3 different vendors that are doing IGAs. Is that correct?
We could get we get multiple different responses, correct? At that point, they're providing us information about the company, their performance history, and what type of information they've garnered from whatever we provided them.
You could write the RFP so it has a number of tasks and they can choose to do all the tasks or certain tasks, and then you could piece together contractors if you wanted to do that as well.
Okay, because there was some confusion then. The RFP is to invite companies to come forward to compete for the IGA. We're not going to get multiple IGAs. We're just going to have one vendor do. I mean, so Sean and I had a conversation about this.
You get a request for proposal, you get proposals to do the whole project from the audit all the way through the completed project and possibly the maintenance. And you could get multiple proposals that won't be the audit yet. Once you pick them, then they will do the audit and give you.
But they can't tell us how much it's going to cost or our cost savings.
They can give you ballparks. They just can't give you down to the nitty gritty
Okay,
until
so
they
they're
do
going to
the
give us
investment grade
ballparks
audit.
based on figures that we have.
Yeah.
So my point is that the RFP process could potentially give us 3 or 4 different vendors that are going to say, here is just sort of a ballpark figure for you of your energy conservation efforts. And this is the potential cost, and then your maintenance. And then the council then would award a contract based on that information.
We can most certainly put that in the RFP.
I don't know. Is that what we're intending with staff?
Correct.
I mean,
And then
is
it would
that-
be a professional services agreement.
I understand the single contract part. Yeah. That's not an issue. It's just,
You can ask them for a high level scope in the RFP for a suggestion of a work plan, but it wouldn't have all the details that an audit would have.
so really the request for proposal though is not that they actually do the IGA. It's that we're going to see who will do the IGA. We're
Yeah.
going to,
But you would also need to provide, oh, and
and I know there's a lot of, but we're not paying for the IGA separate. I mean, because we're not just doing an IGA. We have to do all of it, because really no vendor's just going to want to do an IGA. They're going to want to bid
want
on
the
the whole
money.
project.
Based on a number, then, thank you. Then from there, they will give us everything we need to know. And we don't even have to choose them. We can go out again, right? If we don't like what they come back and or we can just say, we'll do part of it.
This is so,
it can be,
No.
you can pick and it's kind of like they'll give you a menu and this is what the savings you get from each
Right.
one. And you
well, that's if
don't
you want
like
to
anything
replace
on
the
the menu.
HVAC and I get that. It's just what I want to be clear about is what the RFP, what is the product that we get out of the RFP? That's what I want to know. What is the product? Is the product simply a provider who will do the
Yes.
IGA and everything? So we'll have 3 people that say, we would like to do the IGA. We would like to do that. That's what we're getting with the RFP, correct?
Yes, yes.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mengel Dean, Public Works Manager again. So the RFP would go out, and what the way staff would put it together, it would be on a grading system, saying these are the items the city is looking for in this RFP. Who can provide this service? And then
Including maintenance.
including maintenance. And once they get the RFP back to us, staff then goes through and grades it. And the person who we then select to do the product is going to be the one who then goes through and does the IGA.
Got it. Okay.
They all
so-
don't do it. One
All
per,
right.
once we
So
select.
once,
Then it comes back to us.
yes, so
Correct.
then it comes back. So let's say they do the IGA. They say, okay, here's our recommendations for all the different things that you can do to conserve energy and get the biggest bang for your buck. Then that comes back to the council to decide whether or not it wants to do one, all, or none of those items.
That is correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Okay. So, I'm just going to speak to the, we have three different recommendations or actually not recommendations. We have three different motions that are before us here as options. Personally, the motion to rescind my motion, which was adopted at the June 12th meeting. I'll simply say, I think it's premature that we rescind that because what it sounds like, everybody's in agreement, and I can support going out to an RFP for the IGA, just as we just discussed. We are not agreeing to move forward until we actually have the results of the IGA. So to me, we're pretty premature because we're not tonight deciding that we're going to install solar at the police department. And that's the only reason that we would have to rescind. I will respect the wishes of my colleagues, but that's just my opinion is that we're premature on that. On the third motion, directing staff back to a future item, I think that's premature as well. The city manager has indicated it's premature because we just don't even have any idea. So I could support going out for an RFP and recruit energy services companies to develop an energy services contract and an IGA, which included maintenance. I want that piece in there for all the city-owned and operated facilities. I think it's important that we look at everything so that we get the best, bang for our buck.
Can I make? Oh,
Question is, if we don't rescind the solar installation of the police department, does that deter or affect the IGA at all? Because down in the motion, we're saying, look at the police department.
Yeah, just one point of clarification on the process for this. So you will be deciding to move forward before the IGA. We'll be deciding to move forward when you award a contract. And that.
But we're not deciding to move forward on all the solar installations before the IGA.
No, but the contract will include that. When you award a contract.
But for the second time, because right now we're just doing the contract. We're just doing an RFP. We're not doing a contract today.
Yeah, so.
and we'll write the contract so it doesn't require us to do that extra work.
Right. So there'll be one contract. It will be at the end of the RFP process. That contract, if the direction is to proceed, would include the police station. Whether or not to actually proceed with the police station is a notice to proceed process under that contract. But the action of voting to award the contract at the end of the RFP process will be something that would be in contradiction of the June.
But we could rescind the motion at that time. Right
You could.
now, we're not taking any action to approve solar at any site. We're simply saying we're going out for an RFP.
Yes,
So
staff
I'm-
included it only because if you get to that process and then don't want to do this, we've gone through a whole bunch of
Sure.
steps to get.
And I
there.
respect
The question
that.
is, does it deter though? Does it deter individuals from joining us for the RFP?
I don't
I
think,
don't
Get in the RFP, then I don't think. it
no,
would.
because we're going to say in the RFP that it
For all
says
sites.
everything.
Right.
Okay,
And so I don't think it's a
Okay.
deterrent. I just think it's premature.
that's fine.
I have
So-
a point of clarification.
Mhm.
When we're doing the RFP, can we say one or multiple vendors to do all of that work? Because I want to make sure if we have a vendor that only wants to do maintenance and we have other ones that won't do it, that we can pick two different vendors to do the full scope of the work, which if you, because we've done that before in contracts that I've done where if you need multiple vendors to do all of the scope, then you can pick those two vendors to get all of it accomplished.
Yeah, so there's yes, the RFP could say the city will award one or more contracts to do the work in here. You can
Okay.
Do it that way.
And just to, because that just covers your bases and makes sure that if there's a vendor that just does maintenance and the other piece doesn't, then you have all the pieces that you want.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the council has all the information, including what the costs are for maintenance and how that is weighed with regards to cost savings.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Any other comments or questions? I'll open this up for public comment.
Yes.
Yes, Councilman.
I would like to know when you go out for an RFP, how widely does that have to be published in newspapers and so forth? Is there a requirement that, I mean, if it goes into the Auburn Journal, for example, would that attract enough people to want to
Well, so
respond?
a lot of the public works solicitation competitive bidding statutes have requirements for how to do it. They don't apply in this case because we're using a slightly different statute. But I believe your public works manager has a plan for extending this out and having a deadline perhaps longer than the normal 10 or 14 days. There's also trade journals and other forums and places to post it. So I'll defer to the public works manager.
Thank you, Gary. That's correct. So we cast a pretty broad net with this one. We use the Auburn Journal as usual because we would like to attract local vendors as well, but we go to something called CIPlist.com, which is a national publication. So it sends it out to everyone. So anyone who's interested in bidding on presenting the city with a proposal can do so.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to open this up for public comment. Is there public comment on this item?
Got piles here.
Glenn Kramer, Secretary SAC. We enthusiastically support this proposal, so thank you for considering it.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to close. Is there any additional public comment? Any public comment, Madam Clerk online? Okay, hearing none. Again, I think that I verbalized, my position on this. I can certainly support an RFP, for to recruit energy services companies, as we discussed. That's not committing to taking any action until we have an opportunity to see what the costs are, what the cost savings are. I think that is prudent for us to ensure that we are certainly saving money, saving the taxpayers money. So I have no issue with taking a look at what those an IGA would produce, what the recommendations would be, what the costs are and so forth. So I would support a motion to direct staff to request that RFP.
Madam Mayor, unless there's any other questions.
Are there any other comments or questions
Comments?
at this time?
No.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I will make a motion that we direct staff to draft a request for proposal and recruit energy services companies to develop an energy services contract, with the option for maintenance, and or an investment grade audit at all city owned and operated facilities.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, to the question, with the option for maintenance.
That way that we have the ability to, as Councilwoman Rodell Harris mentioned, we have the ability to choose whether or not we move forward with maintenance as being a component.
Is there a better way to word that with the option?
I would say I would amend it to say
Got it.
including maintenance, but possibly provided by multiple vendors. I don't know. Is there a better way to state that? Because
Gary, can I really say?
What is the right?
Mine is lowercase motion, right? And so the specifics and how you do it can meet that intent that I think meets this intent, this discussion, correct?
Yes, exactly. I think that staff will include sort of, alternates and different options for bidding on this. And
Why
then
put a
the
comma?
proposals will be come back.
Okay,
Yes.
and speaking to the question, I just want to make
Totally.
it clear that maintenance is not an option. Maintenance is necessary, but you're just giving flexibility.
Correct. The RFP will include the option to put in a bid for the maintenance.
There you go. To put in a bid. Okay.
Again, it was comma lowercase, so I think that
Yeah.
the intent was clear.
Thank you for the clarification on that. Any other discussion or questions to the question?
I think there might be one question from our community development director.
Yeah.
I just real quick, because we don't know what the outcome is of this, so it'd be very hard to put in a RFQ or RFP for maintenance services if the companies that are doing the actual ESCO, they don't provide those services, and we don't know what the actual outcome is going to be. The idea would be to put in the financial analysis that shows that here's our recovery of costs. Here's what we should anticipate as far as maintenance costs going forward, and we'll include that in the cost recovery. Now,
That's what
that
I'm
would be
talking about.
Very perfect.
That's exactly what I'm talking
That's
about.
what we
I
need
just want to know.
Anticipate at this point.
Yes, I just want to know what the cost of that maintenance is. And that's exactly what I'm asking.
Perfect.
I think we're all,
Gotta fill the motion.
Why? Why? No, it's a good motion.
Well,
So
the
do we need
second
to-
motion is voted on first, right?
wait,
So if we
wait,
do another
wait.
motion.
So do we need to reword, do we need, the motion that's on the table?
Gary, what do we do?
I think that this gives enough clarity to staff on what to include in the RFP based on the.
Okay.
Want to make sure we have an understanding.
Yes, we have, okay. So it's clear.
Meeting of the minds.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
So there's no need to make any amendment to the motion. The motion is on the table. We understand that the intent is to ensure that they include the cost of maintenance. Got it. Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
I'll second, or anyone.
I seconded it.
Doesn't matter. Well, I'll second.
Perfect. Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. And let the record show it's been adopted unanimously and that this is for all city-owned facilities. Yes. All right. Next item on the agenda is the city manager's report.
Humming right along. I only have one thing, and then I'm going to ask Mendel to give his update on our paving project. But I wanted to let council know during the last council meeting, we had a lot of discussion and concern about the noise from the fairgrounds, and staff was given direction to work with the fairground CEO to look at, whether we could do an MOU or to prepare some sort of an agreement on the way that events are handled at the fairgrounds. So we actually have that meeting set up tomorrow. It'll be me, interim chief John Rogers, acting chief John Rogers, and Chief Canan. I'll be through Zoom, obviously, but we'll be meeting with the fairgrounds CEO to kind of just talk through the issues. I haven't heard a whole lot about the actual fair over this past weekend in terms of noise or anything like that. I saw one thing, I think, on Facebook, but it wasn't a whole lot of noise issues related to the fair itself. So that's good, but we'll be talking to him tomorrow. And then with that, I'll answer questions if you have questions about that.
Looking forward to your update on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Council.
Madam Mayor, and thank you for that, Sean. And I think the one thing I would hope that you can convey is that this council, though during public comment, so I guess there was comments made, but we highlighted that the fairgrounds is an economic driver of our
Sure.
community. And it's very unfortunate that at Medlars, it was very much commented that we did not care about that. And that was somewhat insinuated. And so I hope that you can convey the message that we discussed at this meeting and that was quoted in the newspaper, that, we do want to make sure that the fairgrounds is successful. And I'm glad that they packed that event, but I think it's really important that it's noted that this council does support the economic vitality role that the fairgrounds had.
Yeah, 100%.
And I just to let the council know, when I had my meeting with the president and the CEO months ago, that was reiterated multiple times that we appreciate the economic driver that it is and that the events that can happen there. So looking forward to the outcome of your meeting. I think there were just issues with the fact that folks camped there and that the campers were noisy, but in any event, we're looking forward to the results of your meeting. Thank you very much.
Sure. So next up, I'll ask our Public Works Manager, Mendel Dean, to give an update on the paving project. Just let you all know where that's at.
Good evening again. I'm Mendel Dean, Public Works Manager. Happy to report that we're almost at the finish line with the paving. Unfortunately, we were supposed to wrap this thing up on the 5th and the 6th of last week. Unfortunately, the contractor experienced some mechanical issues with their equipment. So you'll see most of the striping is done, but the thin striping was not yet accomplished. The expectation is that will be done on Wednesday. We've had several conversations with them. Amy looks out the window every day to point out to me everything that's going wrong with the traffic. So I'm
Amy is watching the traffic. She is there.
she's She's definitely the greatest public works liaisons we have in that department. But the expectation is that everything is going to be wrapped up by the end of this week. And there may be some small punch list items left behind. There's some cleanup. I'm unhappy with some of the way some of the chips are left along the roadway. So we'll point that out to them. But for the most part, any heavy equipment and major roadway work will be cleaned up by the end of the week.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mitchell. Anything else, Mr. City Manager?
No, that's it for me.
Okay. All right, council members, reports? Anybody have any reports?
I don't have a report, but there was a constituent that sent information. I don't know if everybody got it on the Sacramento light pollution, how it disrupts patterns of wildlife. And that just for us to be supportive of the light pollution in our yards. There's ways that you can cut down on light and how important it is, because it is damaging the insects, and so something we should be cognizant. And also, I'm not sure, someone also indicated that the clock tower isn't lit up. I'm not sure who's supposed to do that, Public Works, but maybe we should look into that, because that's beautiful part of Auburn.
What? Oh, yes, yes. That was a nice Edie Lambert
Was it?
photo. Was
The other night. Okay.
okay. Any other comments or council member reports? I will
Yes.
briefly. Yes, Councilman Holmes, did you have a report?
Yes.
Oh, please.
Yes, well, some of you may be aware that Station A in Old Town has been closed by the U.S. Postal Service. And I went and talked to
The post office was closed in Old Town?
yes.
I heard that too.
I have a PO box there.
They're transferring it to
Yeah.
Nevada Street.
Yeah.
When did this happen, Councilman?
Well, it's happened over this weekend, and I have a post office box there too, and I asked them on the Nevada Street, they said they hadn't received all the mail from the post office in Station A yet. But so it may show up.
Why was it closed? Do we have?
Well, that's what I'm trying to tell you, that
Well,
I
enlighten us. Why was it closed?
well, I asked for the postmaster, and I got a senior official, not the postmaster, but and he told me that it had been ordered closed by higher authority. That's all he would say. And as you are probably aware, that post office has been run by a contract,
Yes.
and the last contract holder has died, and then there was a continuation, and the local people who were running it, I think one of them died. So, and I said, well, what's the idea? What are we supposed to do with it? He said, well, maybe we could make it into a museum. And I said, well, I don't think that's what the city would like to see. And he gave me a number to call, a 800 number, which I tried. And he kept asking me the same over and over what my address was. And so anyhow, so I've reported this to our congressman's office, district office in Roseville or Rockland, and see what we'll find out. But it seems like this was, the impression I had was the decision was made by somebody higher up.
Well, it would have been nice if they had talked to the city about that.
Well, that's exactly why I ran to the postmasters, what
Oh.
to,
Or the business association.
Yeah,
On-
because.
The Business
yeah, the Business
Association,
Association was paying for that contract, so I don't understand.
well, I heard there still is a contract, but and so they're trying to pursue someone to take over the contract. So there's still a possibility they could reopen it.
So maybe it's just a temporary closure?
So can
Well,
we
let's-
ask,
let's
can we ask
just-
staff to look into it with?
Yeah,
Downtown Business
let's look into
Association?
this a little bit.
Old Town Business Association
Town
has been
Business Association.
discussing it.
Yeah.
but
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
well,
I'll look into it and see what
yeah.
we can
and
figure
would
out.
would you let us know if we need
Sure
to go to those higher ups? But that's disturbing. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Do you have anything else to share? I'm afraid to ask.
Well, no, I was going to say that I will, my next meeting with the ARD board, I will bring up about the
Tractor,
tractor and that kind of stuff.
see if they have one. Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I can just really quick, I just want to not lose the fact that we acknowledge that the longtime postmaster Frank did pass away. Again, he's been sick and not there for years, right, Mike? If
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And he's had an interim that has been working for him under his contracted services. But Frank, I think, did a lot in our community
He
during that,
did.
those contracted years. And so thank you for bringing up his passing.
I didn't.
Well, and I think a number of us, in order to support that, we've rented post office
Yes.
boxes there, even when we didn't need them.
That's right.
And I always went there to buy my stamps
Yes. me
and
too.
to make sure they got business.
It was the oldest, it's the oldest post office west of the Mississippi.
Well, was.
Well, let's
The-
just
the oldest-
temporarily close.
The oldest operating
Yes, that's,
post office.
so
west
let's just
of the
hope it's temporary and, Mr. City Manager, we look forward to more information on that. Thank you.
Right.
Councilman, I appreciate that. Councilman Berland, did you have anything?
I have nothing.
Okay.
for-
I just very quickly wanted to brief council. My trip to Chamonix was incredibly successful. It was a great opportunity. I passed out swag to people from all over the world, promoted Auburn. Yes. I got lots of pictures with folks with our stuff. But more importantly, the city of Chamonix is very receptive to becoming a friendship city with us. So the next steps really is for us to join the Sister City Association, even though it's a friendship city. At the cost of, it's like $400 a year, the dues to be a member of the Sister City Association. They will then give us a packet that would contain, the draft MOU and so forth that we could sign remotely, so they don't have to fly here. We don't have to fly there. We're trying to keep this nice and chill and not being a costly endeavor by any means. But the MOU would kind of outline issues of general concern that we both have. And but the mayor was very receptive. I met with his staff. I met with the vice mayor. I met with the city council member that is the liaison to the sister cities, because they have 6. Right, including Aspen. So we're a friendship city, but no, they have no friendship cities. And to be honest with you, my feelers that were out there doing some legwork for me before I got there, it didn't sound super great. Like they thought, well, we've got six sister cities. Do we really need another one? But I sat down with Eric, the mayor Fournier, and we just had such a great discussion. We talked about our commonalities that were both, discovery based, founded based on discovery. We were just, with Gold Discovery by Jana. They had discovery of Mont Blanc and the peaks and the guides. And so there's just a lot of similarities. Not only do we have these ultras and things of that nature, but really, I love the fact that they talk about the natural resort. And that's really what we have, a natural resort with the canyon, so in any event, they're very receptive to it. They're very excited. We shook on it. Amy put together a great key to the city that I was able to give to them. And we have pictures of that as well. So it was just a really nice trip. And it was great. So I just wanted to report that. So I would just ask the city manager that on an upcoming agenda item sooner rather than later, if we can have the, we have to vote on the membership to the sister city or association, correct? Sean?
I
Yeah.
think that's, yeah, from what I understand, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to get this nailed as soon as possible. You know, let's get that done and then let's get our packet done and move forward, but all good news. So very excited about what opportunities that we might have being a friendship city, and just from the economic development standpoint, being able to point to Chamonix and to bring in businesses that are endurance related or sports related. I mean, Chamonix, I know Councilwoman Amar, you were there, you saw all the outdoor shops they have, Columbia, North Bay, every possible, you know, I mean, it is, yeah, and the outdoor dining, huh? Yeah,
You going one
outdoor
for one?
dining, just everything, but just, I think there's a lot that we can learn, you know, and from, they can learn a lot from us as well, because, you know, we've been having ultras and endurance activities for a lot longer than they have, you know, and the fact that Western States is 50 and UTMB just celebrated their 20th, you know, so they had some questions about that too. So in any event, it was all great. And so thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. If you could put that on our next agenda, that'd be awesome. Appreciate it. Any other comments or anything before we,
So how is your French?
well, ça va. Ça va. That's what I was gonna say. I was grateful that people, for the most part, you know, there were so many people there from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. English was really spoken quite a bit. And the mayor spoke enough English, we were able to communicate just fine. So we didn't have any issue. So that was great. So.
I just want to say one thing. I just want to thank the council and everyone for moving forward with the solar. I think it's sustainability's worked very hard, and Glenn, I want to give a shout out to him. And I know it's not a done deal, but I think this is a good step forward, and I appreciate the 5-0 vote and again, the hard work that everybody's put into. Staff put in a lot of hard work too. So anyway, my appreciation.
All right, is there, without objection, I will hereby adjourn the meeting, hearing. Oh, yes, sorry. I will hereby adjourn the meeting in Barry Steiger's memory. Of course, Barry passed away recently. He was an icon at K-High Radio, and he will be sorely missed. He was a friend to the city. He was a friend of the community, and what a loss. So without objection, I will be adjourning in his memory. So that shall be the order. Thank you.